So if I'm eating something, I should mute myself now.
Yeah, if you guys want to mute, you don't have to, but... And I'm doing my publishing now. Alright, there we go, got that going. Welcome on in! Welcome on in, Ray, and thank you for joining us, Aurelia. Oh,
Pleasure
and
to be here.
hey, and Itchy, welcome. Or maybe no, we're starting. Don't worry. I cheaply made that logo. That's not our final logo, but I figured I had a bunch of empty real estate, so gotta do that. But I hope everyone's doing good. We're just 5 minutes. Seriously, right? Thank you. Can't see it on the screen. Damn it. You can't see it, guys. Don't do any redemptions that have a clip. You can't see it, but thank you for that, I guess. Also, I may momentarily have to answer the phone when my food comes in, but other than that, I can hear it, and that's all that matters. Fair enough. Alter, thank you for the alert. Damn it, guys. Thank you for the alert, man. We can just imagine the face that comes. I mean, you're not wrong, Itchy. Not wrong. We're just chilling. We got 4 minutes till we get started. Izzy Towers, Zelda, no way I'm missing this. Well, welcome on in. Yes. I don't know what to tell you, man. Entertain you, you say. I got nothing. I got nothing, man. I got nothing. But yeah, Izzy, welcome on in. We're just giving that couple minutes for people to come on in, chill out, you know? I don't got a joke. I got nothing. I'm sorry, man. You're putting me on the spot. Can't just...
I have a dad joke if you want one of
Yes, please. Entertain us, Leah, with your dad jokes.
I feel like, Joe, you've probably already heard this one before, but my dad told me this this one joke that he has about paper. On second thought, I don't think I'll tell it to you because it's terrible.
Okay. Okay. Awesome, thank you.
Wow, you just missed it. You just missed it.
I thought that was for real.
terrible.
I didn't get it. I'm sorry.
It's paper. It tears.
Oh my god, I didn't get it. I'm stupid. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
All right, back to the shadows I go.
Okay. Complete all. That's true, Awesome. Give me a sec. I know there's a way we can pause them, so I'm just gonna pause all redemptions for today. And there was a joke in chat. Why can't Ganon surf the internet? Because there's too many links. Hey! Bam, that was an amazing joke, Izzy. Thank you. Thank you for the lurk as well. I'm just trying to pause the redemptions, which I can do here, I believe. Or you can do them in the oh, thank you. Thank you. I was trying to figure that out. Pop out. Got it. Thank you. So guys, there won't be any of the sound most of the rewards won't be available today. Let's just put it that way. Just because we're on a podcast, and I don't want it to interrupt anything. I really love Zelda. Dang, he's coming with fire. I'd tell you another Zelda joke, but I'd have to try and force it. Hey! Nice. Okay, hopefully all guests are not eating their food or anything. We're switching to the podcast now.
Let's go already!
Clearly, I didn't do it. You know, I'm just going to turn it off. Thank you for all the alert noises. I'm going to have to just turn it all off, unfortunately. It's all good. But welcome on in, guests. Welcome, everybody. These are our guests today. Oops. Can I just... is your mic working, Ray?
Yep.
Oh, just make sure. And look, we got Raven Squaw. Oh, no, I'm kidding. So what happened was Raven has some IRL things he's got to deal with. So we had to get a replacement. And Ray was so graciously offered to be here. And so that is why he's over here. But we're joined by also Aurelia Borealis.
Hi, that's me.
And Six Station.
Hey, everybody.
But just to make things easier, we're going to turn off the thing on Ray's there.
But I am Raven Squad. Look, I even got a Red Bull can in my hand right now.
Let's see here. Make sure. Oops. You are group 2. I grouped everyone together and I don't even remember. So we're going to turn off.
Choo-choo, motherfucker.
Something wasn't turned off.
I got it, Ray. Don't worry. And you don't want a red background. No, you don't. We'll get you the purple one. There you go. What's up, everyone? What is up? So I'm going to disable a lot of the channel points today, guys, because we are doing the podcast. And obviously we want to make sure nothing gets blasted in people's faces. Oh, there. Are they all off? No, they're not. Off. Just turning it off. Ray, start talking for us while I do this real quick.
Oh, I'm talking stuff.
Nice. Okay, so basically what we do on Squaaakin and Jemama, it's myself and Mr. Raven Squad. If you can do a shout out for Raven real quick, who's not here. He will be here later, hopefully, if all things go well. But right now, Ray's taking his place. We talk about topics that interest us, as well as we're very fond of. So, and whoever's the most fond of it will be on their channel. So today we picked Legend of Zelda, and I picked some people that know what they're talking about, have played some games, gamers, Zelda cosplayer enthusiasts. Ooh, you could talk about that for sure, Six. Your experience making the cosplay.
Sure.
But how was your birthday, Ray? Says Ostium. Before we continue.
Oh, it was pretty amazing. Everyone that showed up. I didn't expect a huge turnout and the entire chaos, but it was an amazing time.
I think we all had an amazing time as well. But what up, Perseus? Welcome on in. Lazarus never played. That's a bit of a surprise. Yeah, he's never played Legends. Okay, so this is an open question to everyone before we start with our special thing we do at the beginning of the podcast. Who wants to explain what Legend of Zelda is for people like Laz, who has never played? Any of the hosts can jump in. Nobody's gonna.
Oh
play.
Lord. Well, maybe I'll just say a bit of a blurb.
Yes, go for it.
I mean, The Legend of Zelda was first released in 1986, so just because of its historical time frame, it became an inspiration for a lot of games that followed. It's an adventure game, single player. It debuted on the Famicom, obviously what we know as the Nintendo Entertainment System. And it's a game about a boy going on an adventure to save a princess, and that was just the basic premise of it. And every game from then on has kind of followed that same premise, but with greater iterations and obviously with the advancement of hardware and everything, the game just became better and better. And yeah, that's the basics of Zelda.
Yeah. It was also patterned, I believe, after Miyamoto's life as a child, like exploring the woods. That's what inspired him to create this kind of a game. And as Six Station mentioned, it kind of progressed from that basic storyline into, like, as time went on with more in-depth story. Obviously, as the technology improved, stuff in game became more involved, complex. But it's always been known for a few things. The characters, and no, it's not Zelda. The person, the dude isn't Zelda. Zelda's the princess. Mr. Raven
The main
Squaw.
protagonist, his name is Link.
Thank you. As well as puzzles. It's known for its puzzles. For the most part, I think that's a
Damn water temple.
Oh, I love the water temple. But welcome on in. Is he a legend? I mean, technically, yes. Yes, we could say that.
I would say Link is a legend, but I think the greater legend is that of Zelda, right?
True.
The princess who is destined to save the kingdom at the end of the day, but you play the person who has to save the person who has to save the world.
Saving the princess called Link. Princess Link be looking nice though, is he?
It's salvation with extra steps.
Welcome on in,
Exactly.
Spectre. Mark, hey, how's it going, man? Got some kits? Be streaming this weekend? Sick. No, the guy with the sword is Zelda. You guys are killing me. Okay. So
I feel like the Legend of Zelda, if you want to give like a metaphor, is like you play Morpheus in the Matrix, and you have to save Neo so that he can save the world.
That is very apt.
Also, give me 1 second. My food's at the door. 1 second. If let's talk about what is your favorite game? Just the title. We'll go into details as soon as I get back.
Okay, Rainbow Man, you start.
All right, I'll start. So probably my favorite would be Link's Awakening for the Game Boy, which was my first one actually.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
Not the DX version, not the remake on Switch, but the very first one for the Game Boy that didn't even have the color dungeon. That was quite an experience playing that when I was younger.
Technically, I didn't play that one because I had DX. Yeah.
I think for me, my favorite one, I guess because it was probably the first one I ever finished, was Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo. Plus, you got that Mode 7, like, pseudo 3D graphics going on. Like,
Yep. Good title.
But I will say what screwed me up in that game was the beginning. You guys, have all of you guys played the Super Nintendo version, first of all?
Yes.
For context. So in the very beginning, you might have seen a meme on it or whatever, but your uncle spoilers, I guess. Your uncle dies at the very beginning, and then he gives you his stuff, and he's like, "You have to rescue Princess Zelda. She is your," and then ... And then at the beginning, I'm like, "She's," and I'm pretty sure Ego Raptor made a animation. He's like, "She's my what? What is she? What is she?" And he's like shaking his uncle, like, "What is she to me?" He's like, "Is she my sister? Like, what's going on?" Just like, because as a kid, I also thought, what the hell was the rest of that sentence? I want to know. Like, anyways. Link's crossbow oh my god. Did he just say Link's crossbow training? Okay. Minish Cap was great. I loved Capcom for what they did to the series. They actually took it and did a decent job personally. How many times did he go into hibernation? That's a good question, Neff. I'm not too sure. My favorite was the Nintendo version. Majora, Twilight Princess, Wind Waker, my favorite. Be Right Back, Quick Shower. I've never heard of that one, but I imagine it's a great adventure.
So my favorite, purely subjectively, is Majora's Mask. I feel like it kind of came to me at the perfect time in my life. It's kind of deep story with, the game came out when I was a teen, and or like a young teen, and I felt like it perfectly suited that like somber energy that I radiated as a teen. So that just kind of fit in well with my life. Of course, the mechanics and the game are great, but I feel like personally it just fit in well with what was going on in my life.
I'm sorry, I missed the Ray's and Leah's choices. What were yours?
I don't think Leah answered yet. Mine was Link's Awakening.
Ooh.
The very original one.
Leah?
Oh, for me? Probably just because of the fact that I've played that one the most, even though I haven't actually ever finished a Zelda game, is probably Ocarina of Time. But that's just from sheer amount of playing it. Stylistically, like if I had to pick which one was my favorite, like artistically, probably Twilight Princess, because I liked that darker imagining, the really like mature design of it, and I just really liked the vibe, even if there is a wolf boy in it, but you know.
Wolf boy. Also, Spectre agrees, Ray. Fuck the water temple.
Water temple.
The
God,
water
where's that-
temple
where's
is
that
only
last
better
silver
because
key?
of the backtracking.
So here's the thing: the water temple is great if you don't have to stop during your time through it. If you stop, it brings you obviously to the start of the dungeon, which can really screw up the way the backtracking works in it. But if you do it all in one shot, it's actually not that bad.
I will agree, because I accidentally finished the water temple without a guide. Because I was like, I got to it, and I'm like, and I was using a guide to this whole point. And I'm like, okay, let's see what's up. And then I just started going through it. And I'm like, okay, what's in this room? And I just kept going and going until eventually I finished it. I'm like, oh.
So for anyone who's unaware, the water temple is notoriously difficult for a couple of reasons. This is in Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. I think it's the second dungeon you do as an adult, second or third. But everybody has these horrible memories as children playing through this dungeon and never being able to get through it until they could find a guide or a friend who knew how to or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, because of the way that saving works in the game, whenever you save, you always go to the start of the area that you saved at. And the dungeon is mostly linear with a tiny bit of backtracking in it. But if you always get put to the start when you save it, then the way that the backtracking works is really weird, because you're now in a different spot than where you were. And so I feel like that is the source of people's frustration and the reason why it has such a notoriety.
I mean, I can't disagree with that 100%. That was an issue. But like I said, like he said, if you finished it, I mean, in one go, it didn't seem that bad. Personally, I didn't think it seemed that bad, but I can only imagine. Burn the water. Yes, burn the water temple. Okay, so
That one key.
before we get into like more in depth on games and stuff, in the Legend of Zelda mechanics, story wise, we are gonna play a little game real quick. So how this is gonna work is we're gonna play some music, and you guys are gonna type down what it is, what's the song, or I guess what's the song would be the better way. There is a thing on YouTube, so for those in the podcast, you can just do the watch the shared screen. Everybody in chat will be seeing it live. There's like a slight delay by 2 seconds. And for everyone in the podcast, just type your answers in chat as well. Therefore, nobody has a one-up on anybody, I guess. I'm going to pause the background music as we play this. So guess the music. The Legend of Zelda Piano Edition. Are you guys ready?
I'm ready.
Yeah,
Yep.
I type slow,
Let's do
but
this.
hopefully I can nail this.
Yeah, here we go. First one. Part 1. Guess the songs.
I can't hear it. Hold on a sec.
Oops. Don't ignore that one. That one got told. Okay. Next one. Okay. Can you hear it, though, 6? Or do I have to raise the music for you guys?
I can hear it okay.
Okay. If it's too low on my side, right-click the share screen and raise the volume manually on your side. Okay, here we go. So second one. This is the real one. Got to remember to pause it before the music's done. Okay. But that was Island in the Sky. Here's the second one.
Why does that sound so familiar?
It does. Write it in chat, guys. Write it in chat. Nice, Raven. Good answer. Anyone else taking guesses? Izzy got one. Okay. So the answer is correct. Deku Palace from
Ooh.
Majora's Mask.
Nice.
Good. Okay. Here's the next one.
I wish I could read music notes.
Honestly, I have no clue. So
I have no clue.
I have no idea on that one. I hate you, Raven. So
I feel like this is
Raven
going to be
really-
like an Adventure of Link thing.
I think
Raven
so
really
too.
be out here choosing violence.
Right? Okay, so gonna give a few more seconds. Anyone want to guess that? Not? Okay. Twilight Princess, Temple of Time.
Oh my.
Really?
Yeah, because
Wow.
you know when you go into the actual temple, like in the past, quote unquote, like that thing. Okay, we'll go up to 5, and then we'll go back in. If you can't guess the song, you should guess the game. What do you guys think for that?
That's not a bad idea.
Okay, so we'll do 2 things. You either guess the song directly, or you guess the game it's from. Okay, so number 4. Here we go.
Hmm.
Put your guesses in chat now. It's actually not bad. I kind of... What? Ray? Okay, so we got Wind Waker, not Wind Waker, and the Song of Storms. Skyward Sword says 6. Okay. A few more seconds for guesses. Otherwise, we're going in. A Link Between Worlds, Lorule Castle. Shit, we even promoted that game.
Oh my god.
Wow.
It sounded familiar. Did sound familiar. Okay. Last one for this round. Here we go.
Why does that one sound so familiar?
I'm guessing boss battle if I were to guess. I haven't seen any of
Yeah.
these two.
Sounds like
Zero
the
out of five
intro
of
to a
these.
boss. Yeah.
I want to say Wind Waker. Goma fight, maybe. I'm gonna say Wind Waker, the bird on the top. I don't know if that's the one. Boss fight, Ganon, second game. Oh, this is Ocarina of Time, I think. Ooh. Okay, Izzy, I'll give you a few seconds to guess, and then we'll pop in and we'll back up into the topic at hand. But okay, in 5, 4, 3, 2. Oh my God! It was a Phoenix battle, Breath of the Wild.
Oh, wow.
Totally wrong. Jesus Christ. Okay, you know what? I'll do one more to redeem everybody. Let's go.
Zelda music vibes different with piano.
Everyone's guessing Zora's Domain. 6. You got to guess? Oh, you did.
Yeah,
Okay.
I put it in there.
This hand of mine is burning red.
Ray's Domain. Nice.
It's wild
Big Cass with the resub. Thank you, Big Cass. Wait, I can do it. Wait, there. Thank you for the resub, Cass. How you doing?
You did it.
I did. And let's see if everyone else. Yay! There you go, guys. Zora's Domain. Perfect.
1 out of 6, not bad.
Hey, 1 out of 6. Yes. Okay. All right. So let's get back to it, guys. All right. Put the music back on too. Let's put that back on. There we go.
I think the Zora's Domain thing is a little bit easy. Legend of Zelda has what is it called? A portmanteau or something, where they use the similar music for similar things.
Yeah.
So the Zora's Domain music has been similar, not identical, but very similar since. I guess that one would have been since Ocarina of Time.
Maybe even.
Yeah, because I was gonna say it had a very Ocarina vibe to it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, we're going to play some more of that later, but we'll pause that there for now. So let's go... In terms of the Zelda games, let's go mechanics. Starting from the very beginning, the original Nintendo version of Zelda, I guess it's just Legend of Zelda, had an open world concept. You go wherever you want. There was no real guide. I mean, there was a guide, but like in-game, there was no guide. You just kind of had to figure it out. I've briefly played it, but I can be honest, the later Zelda games kind of spoiled Zelda for me, so it's hard to go back to that original NES style. Even Link's Adventures of Link, side-scrolling was weird, but an interesting, I guess, choice. Anyone have thoughts on the original set of games there?
Well, I mean, Adventures of Link really stands out as a black sheep of the series because none of the other games that followed really used any real similar mechanics besides what they kind of pulled for Breath of the Wild with the blocking and stuff. But most of the Zelda games have been like a third-person perspective instead of the side-scrolling perspective, and a lot of the mechanics ring true from the original Legend of Zelda throughout the series. So yeah.
I do think the musical cues were done well in the original games, which, as you said, it kind of progressed into later in the series. Also, welcome on in, Mecha Jamaica. How you doing? And I haven't seen the 3D version, Izzy. The map was weird, says Nephilim. I mean, I think that whole, like, what would you call that? Like, where the map kind of slides? Like, shifts, I guess, is an interesting thing. But I think that had to do with more technical limitations than game design, I think. But I did, like I said...
Yeah, that had to do with the way they loaded the games in. The way that the RAM's handled. You see it in Mario as well. The sides of the screen, you'll notice in Mario, kind of flicker. And that's because they're trying to load in these, like, I guess, chunks of the game as you were scrolling sideways. Whereas in Zelda, they wanted to have a big, grander scope. So instead of that, they had all the adjacent sections load in, and then so you could slide between them. And then once you got to the new section, then it would load in the other adjacent ones. So yeah, it was very much tech related.
Okay, so just even if you hadn't played, just based on what you've seen on this game, is this we'll do this for like group of games. Were the NES games good or not, in your opinion?
I personally think that they're good.
Okay.
And like you mentioned before, like, I feel like because I went backwards in terms of playing Zelda games, you're right, there you do get a little bit spoiled in terms of what you can and can't do mechanically in the game. But, I personally think they're still really fantastic games. And there's a reason why, like, this pseudo, like, top-down game, like, captured so many people. It has to have, like, some element that makes it so, like, enrapturing to people.
Ray?
Yeah, as Raven was saying, especially for the time, it was an amazing game, but it was hard. It was a very hard game mechanically, because when I played it, I already played much of the Game Boy games, and I was like halfway through university. And if you don't keep all your hearts and keep your sword beams, it's going to be very, very bad time.
You're going to have a very bad time?
True.
If you pizza and you don't french fry, you're going to have a very bad time? Is that what's happening?
Yeah.
Okay.
I had a very bad time.
Brings up a lot of memories. Did not like the second one for the NES. Okay, Neff. But okay,
so I would agree that both games were notoriously difficult. But of course, if you had the power, and by that I mean the Nintendo power, they released
Jesus
tons
Christ.
of like guides and tips and tricks and secrets throughout. So if you did the pay to win option, it actually it helped a lot, especially with getting through the what was it called, the Mysterious Forest.
Lost Woods? No, wasn't it?
I don't know if they called it the Lost Woods in the first
I think
game.
that came after.
Yeah, but
Maybe.
anyway, the Lost Woods equivalent in the Legend of Zelda, which was completely there wasn't really much clues to it. I think the old woman, if you give her a candle or something weird, like some random thing, then she'll tell you, but like she'll tell you once, and if you didn't remember it, then you're basically scrolling through identical tiles and it doesn't move the map, so you can't really tell where you are in this progression of tiles. It's super weird, but yeah, that was obviously like a huge I guess like barrier to beating the game for a lot of people. But like I said, the Nintendo Power had those like written out. So if you had a friend or if you knew someone who played, because there wasn't really any online guides at that time. Yeah. But I think Zelda 2 was a game that a lot of people really didn't beat. It has more of a Dark Souls feel than a Legend of Zelda feel with the crazy like blocking mechanic. You have to block up or like block high, block low, and some enemies can only be hit from behind or from above, or like it's super weird. So I think that I don't think a lot of people really beat that game. I actually haven't beaten Adventure of Link, and yeah, but I think that The Legend of Zelda, because of the way it was open and you could just explore, and it was also the first game that had saving on the cartridge. So it was a game that was that much more accessible to games like Mario, where there was just no saving, right? So you had to memorize all the way through. Zelda, you could actually save partway through, and that made it so that even though it was notoriously difficult, you could still kind of, if you got locked up at a spot, you could like save it, go away, talk to some friends, or like puzzle through it in your head, and then come back to it and try to beat it, right?
Speaking of,
So,
some people like Raven would their guides would be the friends at school. Like that's, I mean, that was I think a lot of our experience. I'm not sure. Don't correct me if I'm wrong. Where if you're playing a game,
for me, yeah.
Right.
But substitute that for my siblings, because it was all four of us all sitting around the nest trying to all figure it out with the same brain cell.
So
One shared brain cell.
Between all four of us.
But then that's also where you get like the weird rumors, like the whole Pokemon Muse behind a truck thing because of the schoolyard thing. So it was kind of a double-edged sword, getting information from your friends. But guides are for the weak, apparently, according to Izzy. Okay, so and so on the note, you've already touched on it. What areas does the original NES games succeed, and where do they fail? So like we're talking about like the success. It was one of the first battery backed up saving cartridges, so that was a plus. You didn't have to put a massive password in like a Metroid. I think that was a positive on that.
Or Castlevania, yeah.
I guess because it's just the open world concept was really nice. I think the freedom to go wherever you want was great. And in terms of fail, because it is a NES era game, the story is all in the manual, which I think as games progress, they included the story into the actual game itself, like the full background of what's going on, who's who kind of thing. That's my opinion. I'm not sure what you the rest of you think.
I kind of agree with that, because there's a bunch of other franchises that I like in video games that do the same thing, where it's like the story is all in either the manual or subsequent text that's put outside, like fan novels and comic books and all that other stuff. And I would definitely agree with you there.
Ray, no. If you don't have an opinion, it's fine. It's cool.
I mostly agree with that. I didn't have manual playing through the game, so playing through the first Zelda was here. It's dangerous out there. Take the sword, but who are you?
Was that? Correct me if I'm wrong. It's been a while since I played. Was that cave open at the beginning, or like, did you know you had to go in that cave, or you could technically just peace out and go somewhere else?
You could.
Well, I've learned that the hard way.
So yeah, I think that looking through today's lens, there's a lot of things that obviously could have been improved with that first game, like the way that games these days use subtle visual and audio cues to guide you through the game. They had like the essence of what that was back then, but they didn't quite hit the nail on the head. So having that cave, so you had, I guess, 3 ways you could go plus the cave, right? So you could go west, north, east, or go into the cave. And so I feel like because it was so simple, the layout, they knew they were like, okay, we want people to go into the cave, but they could have done something different, like put bushes in front that you had to slice with the swords. You had to go into the cave to get the sword, or things like that could better guide the game. But I think that the openness of it was one of its big draws, that you could just kind of go anywhere and figure things out at your own whim. And there was a lot of secrets, like laying down bombs in front of certain rock faces to make a cave and then find a secret in there that are just completely not there's no indication in the game. So it's just about trial and error and figuring out the game.
But, okay,
and,
but who would
I mean,
figure out the fire, the bush to make the whole, like who would figure that out? Like that's the one thing I think was a little weird,
but people did.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
Yeah, there was significantly less handholding in the first game, especially the first game, because of the fact that like they're just like, oh well, the whole point is you have to figure everything out for yourself, and we're gonna give you nothing. And yeah, sure, that kind of alienated certain people from playing that game, but the people that did figure it out passed it on, and it was like this whole mystical, like, passing down of knowledge sort of thing.
And I think that was a really strong thing that drew people in, like, to form a community around the Zelda series and probably Legend of Zelda to begin with, was that because there wasn't online communities, it was best to know other gamers, and that kind of, because you had something that you could really, talk about and puzzle through, it made those similar people really drawn together. And I think that probably is why there are such strong communities around Legend of Zelda nowadays.
Well, I mean, that explains, like Izzy saying, people in Breath of the Wild, what people do in there. They just tried everything. When you have that kind of a concept, that's one thing. It was ahead of its time, I think, with just a little bit more tweaking. That the whole concept could have been really well done. Yeah. Old school games in general are brutal. Pyromaniacs just want to fire kill streaks. Fair enough, Magnus. Fair enough. Okay.
Oh, hold on. So just to kind of finish one of my points.
Sure.
So looking at it through today's lens, I think there are some real quality of life things that could change and that could have been tweaked. But I think looking at it through yesteryear's lens, I think it was kind of way ahead of its time. I think that they did a lot of things that were really insane for back in those days, like utilizing the hardware in ways that like other games just hadn't, like putting the save features in, but also I don't even know how to like encompass this in words, but like just this, if you think of games back then, again, we already touched upon that, like a lot of them were really sketchy. Like I have some games and they have no story and they're just super weird and outlandish and stuff. Whereas I think Zelda made it really succinct and like kind of grouped their ideas together in a way that delivered much more smoothly than other games did and made it more enjoyable to play. So, and I think that those elements of curiosity and discovery are what drew people into that game, whereas a lot of other games that were super linear, I'm just thinking of things like the first Mario game, where there was a few secrets, but everything was pretty linear. You just kind of ran through the levels, and you just had to time your jumps right. But Zelda was really about a different level of, I guess, competency in gaming. Terms,
yeah, well,
right?
and what's
So, like,
interesting that sorry, not to interrupt, but you mentioned Mario, but I think that might have inferred more of the like secret hunting in Mario after the fact. After like Zelda came out, it kind of sent like this wave of like, oh, people want to find secrets, people want to find a way to break the game. Why don't we give them something to reward them for trying to, do something that you're not really supposed to?
And again, Breath of the Wild, you can do a lot of stuff. Wasn't exactly planned. The flying minecart. I'm reminded of the flying minecart. If you guys know about that.
Or the minecart, or are you talking about the flying like sentinel head thing?
No, so because you can use the magnets to pull up like is it anything or a metal door? A metal door.
Just any metal object.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I was thinking about like, when you find those like sentinels out in the field and you can like attach like a like a sail onto its head, and you can break the physics so that you can make that fly permanently over top of the map.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same concept. Yeah, what Joe's saying is stacking two metal objects on top of one another and mounting one and picking up the other so they both fly in the air.
Yeah.
And you're saying the boat.
Yeah.
Yeah, using putting a boat on a sentinel is a similar thing you can do.
Mm-hmm.
The game was made in inspiration of how the creators would play in the woods when they were younger. Yes. So we're just gonna broad stroke a bunch of the games together. So all the handheld stuff. Let's go Game Boy Race. This is your bread and butter. Which Game Boy games have we played? I actually played Link's Awakening as well as one of the Oracle games, which was pretty fun actually.
I played through Link's Awakening DX, if that counts. Oracle Seasons and Ages. Many times. Because that's the only game console I had as a kid.
Oh. You guys?
The only handheld ones that I've played were HD remasters of Ocarina of Time and a very, very quick, like maybe half an hour of Majora's Mask. But again, those are just the HD remakes for the DS.
So just to save us from this question in the future, I've played all Legend of Zelda main games except for Spirit Tracks, and I played a handful of the spin-offs, but most of the spin-offs are obviously really weird, and I think a lot of people have not.
Hey,
played
listen,
them.
if I was gonna
Tingle's
say,
balloon fight,
I was gonna say, if you want to play Tingle, hey, it's all good, man.
So yeah, there's a couple of those. I haven't played Tingle's Balloon Fight, but yeah, all the main story games except for Spirit Tracks I've played, and all the ones I've played except for Zelda 2, and Four Swords Adventures I've beaten.
Okay. I thought so for those who have played, I thought the Game Boy games kind of took they also had more limited hardware on their hand, right? But that's where the story got fleshed out more. Personally, I think, like Link's Awakening, that was really well done. The remake is because of the fog. I'm not a big fan of that, but I like the art style. But the story was done well. The items, and then with the Oracle games, they added that connectivity between the two, which I thought was very interesting. That's a very nice way to get I want to buy the other game now just so I can, spoilers, fight Ganon. But I mean, but really well done. And I think Link's Awakening was the first instance where they had like a somber ending to the Legend of Zelda stories. Agree or disagree?
It is a mind trip for sure. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would argue that Ocarina of Time had a pretty somber ending too, even though you do beat the bad guy.
Well, I mean, like, didn't Link's Awakening come before Ocarina of Time?
I think it did. So this is probably the first instance then?
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's the first instance where the story isn't all like wrapped up nicely, and it has like a bittersweet ending to it. I mean, depending. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Depending. Do I spoil that too for everyone? It's an older game, but depending if you do certain things in the game, the ending.
I feel like we need to do a poll to figure out if people want spoilers or not.
Look, if you're okay. Disclaimer: if you're in this podcast, there will be some spoilers to the games because we're going through some of the games and the stories. But yeah, if you do a certain thing in the game, you get a certain extra bit to your ending in Link's Awakening, which doesn't make it as sad, but you're still sad because of how it ended. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yes.
There you go.
Oh, damn! In that game, the face shrine is just the self face shrine just sent chills down my spine when I first read that. It's like, wait, what?
Also, Ray, I feel like you stole in the game.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you're definitely the one.
You're definitely the thief.
Tripped up the storekeep and just ripped all his goods out of his shop.
Hey, storekeep, I'm just gonna go in front of you, grab this shovel, and look that way, and just run to the exit.
I feel.
Oh,
like
come back.
100%.
That was so genius how they put that in, how they implemented that. I love that.
And you became a thief from then on. It was great. It was great. And if you had
the only Zelda game that has stealing in it?
Maybe.
I think so.
I can't think of another one that has.
And if you had the DX version with the Game Boy printer option as well, you get the picture of you stealing. And I was just like, it's so good. But
Oh, that was
again, I thought the handheld stuff was done really well. Even if you go with the Game Boy Advance games, haven't played it, but like just the fact that Capcom put so much like effort into it, the Minish Cap was just really like I have it on 3DS when they gave the Ambassador games. Played a bit at the beginning. It's really interesting stuff. They did it really well. And then even if you count the that Four Sword Adventure on Game Boy Advance, not bad. I thought that was okay, personally.
Yeah, it was a good little puzzler.
There, you know, Ray, you cannot defend your actions, sir. How dare you try and defend it?
Listen, 980 rupees is a lot of money for
It's a lot of-
an 8-year-old.
Oh, Gunpla Neon says you can steal in Twilight Princess. Can you?
Oh.
Where could you steal in that game? And you can steal in Canyons of Hyrule. Side story there. But where in Twilight Princess? I don't remember being able to. I would have stole if I could steal.
Yeah, I don't remember that either.
Are you counting like when you're the wolf and you dig into the house and get your stuff back? Because I don't know. I don't count that as stealing. That's just getting my shit back. But how do these games stack up with the rest of the series? I think it sets the precedent on certain things. Puzzles got more complex. Dungeons got more involved. People started doing the dungeons and the puzzles were like the main draw. I think. Personally, when the games start reaching this era, like the Super Nintendo Game Boy era.
I think that Link to the Past really like set the precedence for those like high level of like puzzling. And then I think that the other so Link's Awakening, Oracle of Seasons, and Oracle of Ages kind of followed in Link to the Past's kind of footsteps. True,
because not only did you have to think about the puzzle from your perspective now. Those games had like shifting perspective, so the dark world, light world, seasons, and time. They had to think like kind of fourth dimensionally. How do I solve this puzzle? How do I access this dungeon? I have to do this in the beginning. But then at the same time, Ocarina of Time, if we're going on to the next stage of our conversation here, brings up the time difference. I plant a seed in the past to get the plant in the future so that I can access the temple kind of thing. Which I think, again, this is where they start evolving the mechanics of the game. Thrill Store, you can refill and run. Oh, didn't know that. There you go.
I think that, again, touching on what we talked about in the first Legend of Zelda, I think that in Oracle of Seasons and Ages, they had a lot more of that breadcrumb kind of style of puzzling. So, like, you didn't necessarily had to think through the whole puzzle on your own, but there were certain sound cues and visual cues that would kind of aid you through solving those puzzles. So I think that was kind of where the quality of life of those little puzzles came into play.
And I think it just continued, like we're going on to the N64 era. And especially, that was the first, excuse me. What kind of perspective would you call that? Like third person perspective?
Yeah, just a third person rotating camera. Yeah.
And I think they had that was the first instance. Yeah, it is of the Z lock, where you lock onto an enemy.
Z targeting.
Yeah,
or Z targeting, depending on what country you're from.
We say Z in this country. No, it's fine. It's fine. Say whatever you want. But I thought it was again. And this is where like it started in like from the Game Boy games to Link to the Past, where the story started getting put forward into the game, as well as the mechanics evolving, puzzles are evolving. We get to the third dimension now. To make up for the extra axis you're working on, they created the Z targeting for as an additional mechanic, which worked out, I thought, pretty well. Some might argue that the Z targeting caused fights to be very telegraphed, and that kind of took away from the fun. I don't know. That is me just playing devil's advocate. I thought it added a nice dimension. It allowed you to keep track of where the battle was going, especially with the hardware at the time. It was very limited. I don't know.
I mean, objectively speaking, a lot of games use a similar type of lock-on system to this day, and I think that Zelda pioneered that kind of control scheme. So even though I don't think it was at its prime at that time, obviously, it definitely inspired a lot of what was to come in gaming.
Ray, Leah, thoughts on any thoughts you have on the N64 era games?
It builds atmosphere quite well, because I'll be honest, the Shadow Temple terrified me.
The Bongo Man?
Yeah.
No, just like the approach to the Shadow Temple. Just like, okay, I'm done the Water Temple. What's going on here? Oh, big shadow in the village. Oh, graveyard. Oh, what? No, don't. Hands.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no!
No.
Dead people in the bottom of the well.
Oh my no.
no,
No.
man.
I
And
will
even if
say,
you-
for the amount of experience I've had with the N64 games, which a lot of it, because I've never actually, besides Breath of the Wild, I've never actually personally owned a mainline Zelda game. A lot of the time, my Zelda experience came from playing at any like friend's house that I ended up going to. So my time was very limited with it, but I will say, with the very short amount of time I was able to play Zelda when I had the opportunity to, I will agree with you, Ray, that the atmosphere that the N64 era games puts out is really impactful. Like, as a person who didn't get to play a lot, I had a huge fascination for it within like the first 20 minutes.
That speaking of which, this is the first game they did in-game cinematics. That first intro when you come in and the camera pans and everything, that's all done in-game, and the models are the models that are in-game, which it's a pioneering the technique that got used later on in other games. Mind you, they were late to the game with voice acting, like very late to the game with the voice acting as time went on. But for the time, that was really brilliantly done. And then as basic as it was, the expressions, like when you see Ganondorf on that bridge and he just like slaps you aside, like you felt like Ray says, the atmosphere. You felt like this is an intimidating man. He can whoop my ass right now.
So jumping off to the point, jumping off of your comment about voice acting, now can we make the argument that's either a hardware limitation or it was a stylistic choice by the creators?
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Because I feel like it's kind of an element of both, because a lot of the time when you're playing a silent protagonist, the whole point of it is to have immersion for the player. The player wants to be Link, so by not voicing him, it's easier for the character to empathize with him and to actually just insert themselves into the adventure. So I feel like maybe they might have left it out on purpose.
No, agreed. Like when it comes to your main character, but like everybody else, I think is where like people are wondering how come we couldn't get some voice acting.
But I mean, if you played Star Fox 64, you'd know the capabilities of the voices, the voices in 64 era
Yeah,
games.
so maybe they might have just been like, we're not quite there yet.
It's
But
fair.
Ganon had a laugh in Ocarina of Time. Where he did like a
You mean one of the-
So did
No, it was
so
dark.
did
It was
the
really
main
darker than that.
antagonist in Glover, but that didn't sound good either.
Also, welcome on in, Rip. But no, I think like it's still added. Like, but they even had grunts at least, and like like ah, Link's ah, kind of thing. So which adds to it. Like there was a whole thing. Like I said, it became a very cinematic piece. To the start of the Legend of Zelda became a cinematic piece once the N64 era came around, because then you get into the side story Majora's Mask, and that was pure story. It had all the same mechanics, dungeon design, puzzle solving from Ocarina of Time, but the story took the main front of the game, and I think it was better for it personally, because it was such a good story to tell. It wasn't just you had the overarching story, but then you had the side stories. And then that's where you get to know some of these characters over a span of only 3 days. I think the 3-day mechanic actually helped with you understanding these characters and what they're about.
Yeah, I'm in the pool of Majora's Mask is greater than Ocarina of Time. I know that a lot of people don't share that sensibility, but personally, I think the world building in Majora's Mask was so well done and has such a depth and the character development that these characters go over the 3 days is like incredibly well done.
Agreed.
And again, it's that somber ending, I think, that made it for me. Like, it was just like, damn. Because, again, spoilers again.
Yeah.
Spoilers again. Also, Rip, take it easy. Spoilers again. At the end of this thing, everybody's like, "Oh, the moon's not crashing. Hey, we're doing our thing. We're celebrating." And then you get that scene with the butler in front of the Deku shrub.
Yep, that's rough.
And then it clicks. It clicks where that mask came from that you first get at the beginning, and you're just like, if you didn't already figure it out, and you're just like,
Yeah.
Ow.
Well,
Yeah.
and same thing with Ocarina of Time as well. All the sages at the end, and also the fact that Link now having the experience of having to jump forward and back in time all the time has basically, it's a story of losing his childlike innocence in the world, like leaving Kokiri, having to grow up too quick and all this other stuff, and his fairy leaving and everything. He'll never get that back anymore. It's gone permanently. He's basically like a grown-up in a child's body now.
Yeah, I think both of the N64 era games had that kind of darker undertone, whereas Majora's Mask kind of fully kind of lived out that, and I think Ocarina of Time kind of just kept it, in the shadows of the game. But yeah, I think that, and for anyone who hasn't played Majora's Mask, the whole game is about the world ending in 3 days and everybody kind of dealing with the grief of what that means, or the denial or whatever, everybody's kind of got their own perspective on it. But I definitely think it embraced that darker storytelling, whereas the first game tried to keep it a little bit more lighthearted. So yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Some comments in chat here. Would you want to see the first, even the second games remastered or reimagined?
I think technically the first Zelda game was reimagined through Breath of the Wild anyways.
I think that's correct, yeah.
I agree too.
Because that's basically, like, everyone was starting to get really frustrated with the fact that it seemingly was starting to become too linear in Zelda games, and they wanted to go back to that original, like, figure things out for yourself and having that sense of adventure, and that Breath of the Wild was the answer to that. So I don't really feel like a reimagining of the first game really needs to happen, because we already received that.
Yeah, I think that in terms of the progression of how they kind of came to Breath of the Wild, the first Zelda game had that open world, the kind of do what you want concept, and there was a few dungeons you could do out of order, but they also had like hard gates to the game. So getting the boat was required to get to certain portions of the game. You could not bypass it in any other way. Getting the, what do you call it, the lantern or whatever was a hard, gate as well. Like there was a handful of them, and I think that going into subsequent games, they decided to opt for the hard gate version, where it's you do a dungeon, you get an item, and that item will unlock more of the game, which will include a dungeon. You do that dungeon, you get an item which will unlock even more of the game. And so they progressed into that mode instead of leaving it more open. Although I think that they never forgot about the open world concept, because once you have opened up an area, it's not like Mario where you can't go back to a level, you could always kind of go back to those old areas and talk to the people, and you do the side quests and stuff. But it was really, you do a thing, then you go to the next stage, and you go do a thing, you go to the next stage. Whereas I think Breath of the Wild, they were truly like, we're gonna go back in time, and basically instead of taking the hard gate route, we're gonna go with the full open concept route, and that's kind of where that came from.
Yeah. It's just there were different flavors of Zelda, and like, yes, there's nothing wrong with having hard gates, because you want to incentivize the player to keep getting better and better and unlocking these things, and oh, look at all this stuff you can get with it. But I like the fact that they also were kind of like, okay, well, we're not going to completely alienate the people that are feeling frustrated by having hard gated games, and we'll drop this one in and kind of see how people feel about it. And it had such a huge appeal that, now we're getting a sequel eventually.
And I think that the series is for the better, having done that.
Yeah, well, and that's why there's a whole demographic on YouTube right now that's doing the super fast, like, how fast can you beat Ganon in Breath of the Wild from start?
Actually, a funny story. So I recently reacquired Breath of the Wild. I'd lent it out to someone and just got it back. And I have a 4-year-old child who I tried to coerce into playing. So we played the other day, and I'm thinking, like, we'll just go to, it gives you way markers so that you can kind of follow the like linear progression of it, and we'll just kind of do that and keep it easy. But
Hmm?
no, as soon as that cutscene where Ganon comes out of the castle and he's kind of like floating above it and then gets sucked back in, he's like, "Okay, we're gonna go to the castle and kill that." And I was like,
I
"About
respect that.
that." So then I kind of steered him away, but he still did it completely. He didn't really like to follow those pings. He was like, "I want to go to where the lava is," because he could see the volcano in the distance, and was like, "That is what is interesting to me." And so that's where we went. It was a nightmare because the enemies there are much more difficult than if you follow the more like linear progression style of doing it. But we managed to finagle into getting the fire resistance and stuff, and went in there, and he loved it. And yeah,
Well,
I hope
and
that he
see, and
continues
there's
to
his
play
fun is
that.
learning the trial by fire of being like, oh, they're like super above my skill, like they're super above my skill level and have all these advantages. How am I gonna overcome my disadvantages to beat this enemy that I wanted to go to first? And I think that's where the appeal of Breath came, like, you know, right from there.
Also, I love the fact that the horse will auto gallop on a trail if you let the controller go. If there's a trail, it'll follow the trail on its own. That's brilliant. All games should be doing that.
Yeah, that's inspired from Shadow of the Colossus, actually.
Oh, is that right?
Is it?
PlayStation 2, yeah.
And here
so-
I was gonna make a joke that it's just Final Fantasy 15's car.
Yeah, so no, like basically when Shadow of the Colossus came out, they had spent a lot of time trying to program this horse to act more like a normal horse, because in most games the mount is just a different player model with an increased movement speed. And like if you think of, I don't know, I play a lot of World of Warcraft. If you look at World of Warcraft, for example, it literally is just your character's model but with an added thing on the bottom, and you have an increased movement speed. So it doesn't really change the mechanics of movement or anything like that. But in Shadow of the Colossus, you actually had to whip the horse with the reins, and it would try to steer away from horses. Like if you tried to crash into, or did I say horse? I meant trees. It would steer away from trees. If you tried to steer it into a tree, it would try to avoid it. You could pull it into the tree and make it crash, but it innately, because of the programming, tried to guide its way around obstacles and stay on paths if there was paths. So that's where that was inspired from.
That's pretty cool, though. It's a really
Yeah,
cool
well,
mechanic.
and that's probably why the breath horses all avoid like bodies of water and cliffs and all of that
Echo.
stuff too, right?
Yeah,
Future Speedrunner 6.
I hope so. I mean,
also welcome on in, Nick.
The worst thing he could say is, "Oh man, Dad, I don't want to play these video games anymore. I just want to go play sports." I mean, it's not the
My
worst thing. I mean, I'll support him. I'll support him if he wants to play sports, but I'm hoping he has a similar appreciation for video games. as
You
I
can't
do.
play soccer outside until you finish this video game.
You better beat this boss 20 more times.
Can I get It's Coming Home? I'm not sure the reference, but It's Coming Home. Just to catch up here, Majora's Mask is kind of a nightmare. It's a very different tonal shift. The Master Sword isn't needed to win.
Yeah, in Breath of the Wild, you do not need to get the Master Sword. Interesting choice.
But yeah, so let's just again broad stroke this whole thing. So for like, did you guys what the way the game has the series has progressed? Are you enjoying what's happening? What would you like to change? What do you like on, like, let's say Let's go with Breath of the Wild. What do you like? What they've changed? What do you wish changed? What was different? What do you hope for?
I think I have the same criticism as almost everybody did when Breath came out. They kind of they had like all this insane like open world level stuff, but then like the story was like super bare bones, which I guess is a callback to the original game. But I wanted to have a little bit more content when it came out, and you know, obviously they fixed that with the 2 like DLC packs that they put out for it. But I just wish that was already in the base game. But I'm a kind of person that, you know, if you're gonna send out like a AAA game that's supposed to have hours upon hours of playtime, like I want to get my money's worth out of it, and I'm not a huge fan of releasing DLC packs for things that should be
Pokemon
longer than they should be. Yeah, like Pokemon, or you know, or like Final Fantasy 15 when they released like 4 DLC packs for each individual character, and then like another one after that fact. I just wish that was in the game to flesh out the story more.
For me, while I did enjoy, like I agree, when I did enjoy the mechanics of the game, it was very interesting. The open world concept, I felt that there was a kind of a disconnect between the characters that populate the world and your character. Like you just show up and they're like, "Hey man, I need this. Can you go get it?" And like, and I thought about it. I'm like, why does this seem so weird to me? Because it's not as organic as other games, AAA games. When you get a side quest, it like kind of naturally flows into your quest log, not just some random quest giving guy. Like I feel like it's an MMORPG at that point where you just go up to the guy with the question mark on his head and it's just like,
Well, and to jump on top of that, actually, the thing that makes it feel so weird and disconnected is the fact that Link's been asleep for like, what was it, like 1,000 years or whatever it is? You are essentially a ghost to this world. Nobody knows you. You have nothing that roots you into this story world because everyone that you know is basically dead except for Prince Sidon. He's the only one that knows who you are.
And yeah, so there's that was kind of jarring to me. And then kind of like you said, the content, like you wish it was there in the beginning. Like while I understand why they designed it that way, the story took a big like side. Almost knocked over my light bulb there. Took a sidestep to the whole game. And again, I love the mechanics, but like part of the reason why I didn't completely hate Skyward Sword was the story. The story made me want to keep going. I wanted to know what happened to Zelda. I wanted to save Zelda. Why did I get here and Zelda's not here anymore, kind of thing. So the story took a sidestep in Breath of the Wild, and the kind of was like a negative for me personally.
And that's kind of why, like, it's almost like Breath of the Wild almost had like a Sins of the Father moment of like the original Zelda game, where it's like, again, the story is in the subtext, or the story is like in the manual, or like, you know, side text outside of the game itself if you wanted to like glean any sort of like information about this world that you're in.
Ray, 6?
Yeah, so I can agree that they could have done a little bit more of the story. I absolutely hate the idea of having DLC in the Zelda game. It just seems completely like too much of modern gaming and not enough of like the core of what Zelda meant to a lot of people. So I definitely think that was really weird. And also, I think that a lot of the DLC stuff was really unnecessary. So the extra armors, like they threw in the
motorcycle.
What was it called? The motorcycle. I'm neither here nor there about. I think it's fun, but I think it is a little bit out of place, but it could be well explained by the fall of a great technologically advanced ancestor or whatever. But I think that having like they put in a bunch of the like flavor armor, the like the Zant helmet and the Phantom Knight armor and stuff. I think that those are a little bit pay to win because until you get the ancient armor, there's no other armors that are as strong as the Phantom Knight armor.
You're right.
So you could just grab that really early on because it's actually not in a hard to reach place and kind of easy mode the rest of the game. As well as Zant's armor gives you immune to freezing. Like it's just one piece, the helmet, and it just gives you permanent immunity to freezing. So it kind of just, I think it kind of sidesteps the all the the fun exploration that was planned and the difficulties and the trials that were laid out for the player to overcome by just paying like whatever $15 and getting that armor thrown in the game. I also think that people should be able to play the way they want. So you could just not get it if you think it makes the game, you think it's too OP, just don't get it, right?
True.
But at the same time, it does feel like pay to win, and paying more money for the game is just, I feel like it's just too modern gaming. Like everybody's just trying to suck the money out of its consumers, and I feel like that's a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, well, and didn't the second half of the Breath of the Wild DLC also kind of have a little bit more flavor context in terms of the other champions?
Yeah.
Like it actually fleshed out their story a lot more. I feel like that should have already been there because I wanted to care more about these people that were supposed to be the champions of Hyrule that were supposed to save us, and I just couldn't connect to them at all.
Yeah, until the DLC, it did feel like they were kind of lacking a bit of that like oomph that makes you want to, fight alongside a character or make you want to love that character.
The side memories could easily be missed by a lot of people too if they didn't do it, so you would never get any context to some of these guys either. So
And
I mean, the
also,
game
it
does
makes
try
your
to
like,
guide you to those, but
yeah, it makes your tsundere Rito character like not as interesting because there's no character redemption for him. He's just a salty boy.
yeah.
Speaking about salty boys, Ray, any thoughts?
I haven't played Breath of the Wild, so I actually have nothing to say
Uh-oh.
on this topic.
Oh,
Somebody has to tie down Ray and get him hooked up.
You're gonna have a Clockwork Orange moment where you have like the things holding your eyes open till you finish the game.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Let's catch up on chat real quick. Maz wants better durability. I feel like the durability was a little too much for my liking in this game. I get why.
Disagree,
Again,
but-
I guess I get why, but I haven't played games like Fallout, New Vegas, and stuff like that, where like durability was a thing. It kind of in a Zelda game seems a little off-putting to me. Me personally, again, my opinion. Just like Six has his own opinion there. Maz also says Link has trusting eyes, very dependable. Okay.
That was in regards to the side quests.
Oh.
Like you walk
Um,
up to a stranger and he just has trusting eyes, so,
Oh, got it,
you're
got it.
like, oh, okay, yeah. Could you find my daughter, or could you whatever?
That's
go
just
grab
because he
10
looks
apples
like
for
a
me?
soft, sweet boy.
Yeah,
Um,
he's a soft, sweet boy.
And if we're still on the Breath of the Wild tidbit, we could stay. But Maz and Nick have some questions. Nick asks, "What is a Zelda game that you have not played and why?" And then Maz wants to talk about the side game Hyrule Warriors and story. So let's start with Nick's question. What is one Zelda game you have not played and why? Me personally is the Game Boy Advance games. Like, they look great and I have one, but the reason I haven't played it is because before the 3D Ambassador program, I had no access to those. So it wasn't like on the top of my list to go find one, and I don't like, while people emulate, I don't necessarily a fan of emulation. I'd rather play it as it was meant to be played. So that's my reason. And not a big reason, but that's my reason. That's one of the games I want to play. Ray, let's go with Ray since Ray's been quiet a lot and just nodding.
Every single game past 2008.
Because
I just have a lack of time.
that's true. That's true.
And also, Wind Waker. I that was back in like 2000 something. I didn't play that because it just threw me off the art style. I wasn't a big fan of it, and because of that, I didn't play it, which is probably not a great reason. But
That was a lot of people's reason though when that got shown.
Absolutely.
Also, welcome on in here, guy.
But I do need to go back and start playing them again.
Okay.
And see what I missed.
Leah?
For me, well, because like I mentioned, I had a hard time like having access to Zelda games, and like Breath is the only one that I've actually personally owned and have played, even if I didn't finish it. So I do want to go back and at least finish that and finish Ocarina of Time and possibly Majora's Mask. I remember when I tried to play on the 3DS version that I ran into a lot of mechanical problems that I thought were game breaking, which is why I haven't gone back to it. And also I had a hard time with the very short time constraint. So like I'd like to go back with the like original N64 experience if I could. But yeah, there's a lot of Zelda games that I'd want to go back and play. So like the list of games I want to go back and play again is longer than the amount that I've actually played. But I think Twilight Princess, absolutely, just because, again, aesthetically, I personally like looking at it the most.
Also, Ray, do you gotta go? If you gotta go, I'm not gonna keep you.
Okay, but on the topic of Majora's Mask and time constraints, how did people find out about the song that forwards time and it's the song that slows down time to a half?
It tells you.
It does?
A lot of people miss it. Yeah, a lot of people miss it. But when you talk to the Scarecrow, he literally just says, he says it in a bit of a poetic way, but he basically says like, play it twice and you'll go ahead time, and play it. What is it? Play it backwards and it'll slow down time. He just basically tells you. Yeah.
Oh.
What?
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
He tells you every time you talk to him. So the first time you see him is inside the observatory, and so you have to go to the observatory in the first 3-day cycle, or else you don't get the moon's tear and you don't yada yada yada. But yeah, he just straight up tells you.
Well, it looks like somebody's got to replay a game on stream.
Yep.
Yeah.
6.
So like I said earlier, the only one I haven't played is Spirit Tracks. and I own it.
Oh.
Actually, so the only reason I haven't played it yet is just because I have such a huge backlog of games, and I'm actually at this point now where every game feels like homework. Like as you know, I have the Dark Souls game, your Dark Souls game, and I'm just trying to finish it now because I only have a little bit left to go. But it's finding that little bit of time that I get per day to work on it and all the other things I have to do, and deciding that that's what I want to work on, and not work on Spirit Tracks or not work on however many million games I haven't played yet. So really that's the only thing. And yeah, there's nothing really that's drawing me in. Like there wasn't any special features that I was like, oh man, I really can't miss out on this. So I think that's why it's kind of taken a lower priority. But I should really go back and finish that and then knock off the other handful of games that I haven't like 100%ed yet, and then just say that I've done them all.
I mean, I still got to go back to beat Link's Awakening, so on the remake.
Yeah, I didn't get the remake, but yeah.
But Ray, do you got to go, man? I don't want to keep you.
I should be okay for a little while longer.
Okay, cool.
Awesome.
So
yeah.
I just remembered something that I totally forgot about Majora's Mask, and something that was completely off-putting for a lot of people was the interrupt save feature.
Where you hit the owl and then
you hit the owl. So the way that works, so you got to remember that Zelda, the first Zelda game introduced saving, which was just a straight up save. Like you save, and then everything you've done prior to that will always be in your game whenever you reload it. Whereas Majora's Mask, because of the unique mechanic of the 3-day cycle, anytime you go back in time, it saves your game permanently, except you lose all of your
progress
countable items. So, well, not progress, but you lose your countable items, things like rupees and bombs and stuff. But you keep all of your main quest items, so things like the hook shot or the bow or whatever. So that's what happens when you go back in time. But if you are, say, like at the end of the first day and you're like, I still want to continue through, but I have to go eat dinner or whatever, you have to stop playing, you can do what's called an interrupt save, where you hit the owl statue and it brings you back to the
exact moment.
It brings you back to the start menu, and you can shut off your game, and it's technically saved. But as soon as you load up your game, the interrupt save is used. So you go into your game, and you can interrupt save again to save that point. But if you turn off your console after you've interrupt saved, it'll go back to the last time you actually saved.
Oh, weird.
And so some people maybe didn't understand that mechanic, and thought that they were losing stuff or losing progress or whatever, because that's the way it works. Now they corrected that for the remake. They made it slightly different. Whereas now if you shut off your game after an interrupt save, it'll actually bring you back to your interrupt save. So I think that's a great quality of life thing, especially for people who didn't understand how that mechanic worked. But I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people kind of didn't get Majora's Mask.
So that was like the pre save state then, almost.
Yeah, but it's not really a save state, because it's like a save state, but it can only be used for that one time that you do it. So you hit the owl statue, brings you back to the title screen, and then if you load up your game again, that save state goes away, it disappears.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay.
Great game, but I think that, again, through today's eyes, that could have been done differently. But through when it came out, I think that was genius, in order to maintain the way that the mechanic of the 3-day cycle worked. But yeah.
Okay. Catching up here. Overbearing time limits can really be unfun to play around. Minute is a neat game that works around that. Ray's flabbergasted. I know Majora's Mask time limit is scary, but we're all agreeing that, like, stories, like I said, that's why I like the story that happens in Legend of Zelda. Yeah, it's always about a guy, a princess, bad guy, possibly the Triforce, not necessarily the Triforce, but an adventure. But like mechanics matter as well, is what we're trying to get to as well. That being said, we can talk about some like lore points if you guys want, or we can still stick on the games.
I don't mind moving on to lore.
Lore points.
Yeah.
Thoughts on?
I actually need to go right now.
Okay, Ray. Well, for everybody, I want to thank Ray for joining us.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you for being Raven Squad today on Squaaakinatjoemama. Did you do the It's Your Boy? Because I feel like you didn't do that.
Oh, it's your boy Anton Mack, hero of Red Bull. Please sponsor me.
There you go. But make sure you guys check out Ray if you haven't already. Ray is a ray of sunshine in our community, and always a fun guy to be around. Ray, take it easy. Remember, close your browser.
True, motherfucker.
this.
There you go.
All right, everyone.
Have a good one.
See you
Bye,
later, Ray.
Ray.
And I'll turn off Ray's logo and Ray's name. I'll leave that blank. We can get rid of it for now. Like that.
You need to put a thing that says future guest.
So
or put your ad here.
I thought about making an Anton graphic or whatever and just stick it over there, but I'm like, whatever, it's fine. It's fine. So lore-wise, the canonical timeline. Thoughts on Nintendo having to do that and the fact that it exists. This goes to chat as well. Your thoughts on it being a one big-ass timeline, which will lead into Hyrule Warriors. Don't worry, Maz, I haven't forgotten that question, but...
I was on board with the creation of like how the timelines work versus like Hero of Time wins, Hero of Time loses, and all of that until they decided that they were gonna funnel it all into Breath of the Wild, because I think that's where it kind of breaks the lore a little bit. And it's like, look, I understand you're trying to like connect all these things together to try and like make coherent sense of all of these branches that you've made with no actual like plan to connect them, but like I just thought it was. I just kind of saw it and I was like, really? I don't know.
I agree. I think it was very interesting, the branching timeline, when they created that idea. And then when you get to Breath of the Wild, like, we're not going to tell you. It does fit somewhere. And they get all these tidbits of things that should be in other timelines. You're just kind of like, that doesn't make any sense. Even if I were to believe that one, but then that one exists over there. And I'm like, how the hell does that make any sense? Oh, Pocket, welcome on. Yes, Legend of Zelda Timeline. We're talking about what our thoughts on it, and yeah, if you have any opinions on it, like Aurelia and myself are on the mental note that it was an interesting concept, but then trying to funnel it all into Breath of the Wild was kind of not the best move, personally speaking.
Yeah, well, and I understand why they did it, because they were trying to, because you know how like earlier on in the timeline they had it so that in certain games the Zora didn't exist, and in certain games the Rito didn't exist, and they had to try and find a way to like reconcile them all together. And then they did that in Breath of the Wild where they had all of them, and there was like this whole speculation of, oh, well, the Zora ended up becoming the Rito or vice versa or whatever, just trying to find a way to make sense of it all. So I get what they were trying to do. I just think that their execution could have been better.
Yeah, I mean, in Wind Waker, they had already theorized that, where they basically said the Zora became the Rito after the flooding.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But honestly, my whole opinion on it is that the official timeline that was released in the Hyrule Historia was never necessary. I think that a lot of fans wanted it, but I actually think it was like the whole community was much better when there was no official timeline, because people could speculate and people could draw from the games and try to seek out the little secret, Easter eggs of, little scribblings on the walls and stuff. I remember people talking about Twilight Princess and the Uku or whatever.
Yeah, the little bird people. Yeah.
And they were talking about how if you like take the art of the stones in the temple and you stretch it out, you can kind of see that there's like little Uku drawings or something. And I was like, man, like people have way too much time on their hands, but B, like that's great, because developers could then, hide little secrets within their games and hope that people will find it, instead of being like, well, here's all the answers and they're not even that satisfying, but just here they are.
Yeah.
The secret in the McChicken is just salt and pepper. You guys thought it was 12 spices? Nah.
Okay, but like, can we back up and okay, so I understand that they tried to do this thing where they're like, okay, the Rito, like basically the Zora became the Rito like after the flooding. How does that make any logical sense, considering there's less dry land to land on?
My understanding was there was like different types of Zora that can only be like salt water, like kind of like fish. And so, like, those were the ones that were...
Yeah, but the whole world is salt water because the oceans are all connected.
No, but that's the thing. So
maybe they're freshwater Zoras.
Exactly.
The Zora don't exist at all. This is a very three-headed moment right now.
Also, Scruffaduff, welcome on in. And I believe that was a great, excellent emo drop, as we were mentioning to Oka. So, thank you for that. Because I looked at him like, who the hell has that emo? What the hell? Nick is asking a question. Also, do you guys need a bathroom break or anything?
Oh, I'm good.
I'm fine.
Okay, so I need a bathroom break, but if you can take on Nick's question about the timeline. One timeline? What? It's not 3 timelines? I'll be right back.
Well, I mean...
Yeah.
So yeah, the official timeline is can split into three, right? I mean, I don't know if Joe could potentially bring up a graph of it or something, but in the Hyrule Historia, it starts off as one timeline, and then after Ocarina of Time, it splits into three. So one timeline is where the hero's defeated, and then there's in the main timeline where you win, there's the timeline where you go back in time and you're a child, and then there's the timeline that you left behind where you're an adult, and those are the three timelines that were officially proposed in the Hyrule Historia.
Okay, so it starts here. It starts straight like this, and then it branches off into child timeline. Hero of Time wins. Hero of Time loses. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then those ended up getting funneled back into Breath.
Well, that's speculative. So that hasn't been officially announced, but I think that like theorists say that it's not. It depends on how you look at it, because any of the amiibo stuff would indicate that all of the games kind of go into the one. But if you discount all DLC and amiibo content, I think I'm just trying to look at the Historia and just see. I think that it goes into the hero defeated timeline, if I'm not mistaken. I'm trying to think here.
Yes? Question mark?
Hold on.
But while on the topic of the split timelines, I just want to point out one thing that everyone, maybe some people get it or picked it up, but that I always thought was interesting. When it branches off in Ocarina of Time, and anytime they ever mention Ganondorf, there is only one Ganondorf in this entire timeline when you think about it. It's the same guy. Whereas there's different versions of Ganon, technically, there's only one Ganondorf. So if you see Ganondorf in the game, it's the same one from Ocarina of Time, because Ganondorf was a guy. Like, I don't know how to explain that.
And then Ganon's like the abstraction or whatever he is.
Right?
Yeah.
So Wind Waker Ganon?
Isn't that like the theorist thing that's happening with Breath 2, where it's like in Breath 1 it was Ganon, and in Breath 2 it's going to be Ganondorf.
Yes, and they said there was
explain the skeleton that was in the basement in that like whole teaser or whatever.
In the Gerudo town, they mentioned there hasn't been a male born since Ganondorf. Yeah. And that's because he ain't dead yet. He's still there. That's the theory. So if you're seeing that corpse, and if that is Ganondorf, that is the same Ganondorf from Ocarina of Time. But then now that becomes, well, that can't be, because the timelines we're talking about, the splits, adult timeline Ocarina of Time's Ganondorf and Wind Waker died with the thing in his head. Twilight Princess got stabbed in the chest.
Yes.
Yeah. So then which one is it? If it's the same Ganondorf, because Ganondorf is Ganondorf.
Watch they just have like a scar like on the top of his head and on his chest, and that's like, it's the same.
That's what the crown's for. It's to block his big brain scar.
Oh my god. Pay no attention to my like past life lobotomy.
Well, now I'm gonna have to play Spirit Tracks because that's in that timeline.
Is it?
Yeah. So that would be the timeline of Wind Waker, and so all of the the cartoony ones kind of fall into that. So that's Phantom Hourglass, Four Swords, and Spirit Tracks.
I'll just Spark Notes it. I have no means to play Spirit Tracks.
Twilight Princess got stabbed in the chest and Zant snapped his neck. Breath of the Wild 2's trailer features that neck going into place. Ooh. The plot thickens. But if that's the case, then that kind of like, with the whole timeline converging, it also adds a little like ripple into that, because it's like, well, if all the timelines converge, but you're saying this is the Ganondorf from the Twilight Princess timeline, then is the Twilight Princess timeline?
Maybe, but isn't the Twilight Princess timeline in the Hero of Time Loses timeline?
No.
Yeah, let me look at the Historia. It's gonna be a lot easier to see if I.
It would be very helpful.
My understanding was it's the Child Link timeline, because the Phantom Shade in Twilight Princess is the original Ocarina of Time hero, teaching him his skills that he learned.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that makes sense. I think I remember it being told that when I first started playing Twilight Princess.
Which is sad. Again. It's sad because
this is another instance where the only way I was able to play Twilight Princess is because I was able to go over to a friend's house and play on their Wii, and I only got to play for maybe an hour.
Don't forget that Breath of the Wild is where... No, that's why. We're saying, if this is Ganondorf, hey guy, and he has the neck snap and the chest wound, then that would mean it's Ganondorf Twilight Princess. But then that means...
Also, apparently they haven't officially made Breath the convergent canon.
Oh,
yet.
is that right?
It's speculative.
Oh.
I think Nintendo just hasn't pulled the trigger on where they're going to put it on the timeline until Breath 2 comes out. They're going to wait 10 years, and then they're going to update the timeline about where it goes.
Again, we didn't really need the timeline, but if we're going to make a timeline, you gotta kind of figure out where things go.
Yeah, they could have just left it alone and let the fans do the whole speculation and what have you, but nah, they decided they're like, oh, you know what, let's put this to bed because we want to, you know, we want to engage with the fans on this, but it is what it is.
It is. But it like, so like when you're saying, hey guy, all the things are converging, you gotta remember, shoot, I had a point, I just lost it. What were we just talking about? Let me catch myself up. Oh, so all timelines converging. So I meant to talk about like why I think I want to believe it's the Twilight Princess line, but because you have mentions of the sages, what's her name? Ruto?
Princess Ruto?
Yeah, right. As being a sage,
Yeah.
that only happened in the adult timeline. So then it can't be.
It did.
Right. It can't, because there's like the stones you can find in Breath of the Wild that explain the story. But then
Oh,
if
you're right.
she is a sage, then it can't be the Twilight Princess timeline, because that's when Link was a kid and she wasn't a sage and not awakened as a
That's
sage.
right, she wasn't a sage until she was an adult. You're right.
So like that's where it gets all confusing. Hey guy, Ganondorf
Yeah.
didn't get a head snap in Twilight Princess. It was the elevator. Yeah, but they were connected. And as soon as he snapped his neck, Ganondorf.
Also, I didn't realize that, like, Ruto, like, as a sage was mentioned in the Breath games at whatever point.
Yeah, it's like it's not like by a person. Like there's these stones that tell the history of the Zora, and I found one like when I was playing, and it literally mentioned her being a sage. I'm like, wait, what?
You know what would have been nice? What would have been nice is if there was some way to incorporate that into the storyline of the champions being almost like descendants of the sages. That would have been a really cool story element that they could have explored, but didn't.
Nintendo, free ideas.
Like somehow like
follow the-
Mipha was like somehow related to it.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
so if
Also,
we follow
I'd
the-
argue Mipha is the most boring out of all the champions. But that's
Can you
just
hear
my
me?
opinion.
Mhm.
Hey,
Okay, sorry, buddy. Mic wasn't working. So, to this last point, if you follow, saying that the Breath of the Wild is on the adult era timeline,
right.
then they would have been sages, right? Because that's after they're an adult and Ganon was sealed away, and then Ganon is resurrected.
Right, but
for Wind-
he ends with the sword in his head and the Wind Waker. That's
Yes.
Right? Did I get that right?
But remember, in the Wind Waker, if you go down to the basement, you can see all the sages, right? So we're in the sage timeline there. We're like, right?
Right. No, I get what you're saying. So I'm just
Yeah.
saying, if this follows Twilight Princess, then we'd be in the child timeline. So
That's correct.
So,
Yeah.
but so I guess it's more looking like the adult timeline then, if we're looking at the sage from a sage point of view.
So I'm just going to show the Historia. Hopefully this will show up. I don't know. No, oh god, the lights are way too bright.
It's too bright.
So
Look at these
yeah.
nerds.
So basically, this is the single timeline.
Welcome on in,
until
Raven's
Ocarina
Claw.
of Time. And then if you go up a little bit, you have these are the three branches here. And so if I'm looking at this right, this is the timeline where the hero won, but Link is not there because he was sent back to be a child. Over here is where this is called the child timeline, where you follow Link as he's sent back to be a child again and search for Navi. And then this is where the hero of time was defeated by Ganon and what happened subsequently. So we're theorizing it either falls at the end of this timeline, which includes Twilight Princess, or this timeline, which includes Wind Waker.
oh,
Right? And so the idea, if it followed this timeline, is that the world ends up getting flooded and leads into Wind Waker. And the other two games, you're in the flooded world, but you end up discovering more land. But then this would be far enough in the future that the land would have kind of revealed itself, like the water would have receded. And that would be the world of Breath of the Wild, which I think is what
I'm in for
theorizing,
it.
but
All I just want to point
maybe
out.
there is a merging of some kind, or
Yeah.
maybe what'll happen, because these are not obviously in chronological order.
Mhm.
The first Zelda game finds itself over here,
Mhm.
right? If you can see in there. And then this is like the 8th Zelda game or something. So what could be happening is that they release Breath of the Wild and then have kind of like prequels to Breath of the Wild peppered in to kind of denote how the timelines merge, if that is what they're going for. But as I was saying earlier, I actually don't think that the official timeline is something that is necessary or required or in any way helpful. I actually think that the games as they stand alone hold themselves up really well. And even with this vague idea that these are events that happen in a history of this world,
Mhm.
like it doesn't matter when it happened, really. You know what I mean?
It
Like,
doesn't.
who cares what order it happens in? There's an evil that needs to be vanquished, and there is a hero that is there to meet the oppressor. So make a game.
I agree on the whole. It doesn't really matter. Also, welcome on in, everyone, Mr. Raven Squaw.
Hey, that's me. I'm Raven Squay. Sorry, I'm late. My bad.
Claps for 6. His pocket claps for 6 on his point there. Maz says we need a TVA. Shh, spoilers. For people who want to watch Loki. And Fleef, I didn't see you. Welcome on in. We're talking about the timeline in Zelda, if it matters or not, as well as the point that Ganondorf is only Ganondorf. If he ever shows up in a game, it's the same Ganondorf. Whereas Ganon could be anything because it's the
So I'm just gonna say this because obviously I was listening to the podcast as I was on my way back, and I agree to a certain extent that the timeline doesn't matter, but I believe it is nice to have. Once again, like, yes, on Six's point from like I think like 20 minutes ago. Sorry, like I was listening. I actually watched the podcast. Okay. On Six's point from a while ago, like, yeah, it's not like the timeline's not needed, and to a certain extent, like, I guess the fan base itself will kind of get more of a hard on being able to create their own timeline and make things kind of fit as they need it, and then having devs incorporate secrets to have these worlds connected and so on and so forth. But I think for the people who aren't diehard Zelda fans, it's nice to have some kind of chronological order when it comes to the games. You know what I mean? It's nice to see where things connect. And as much as they did that, Joe and I were talking about this, what was it, like a week or two ago?
Yeah.
About how they did a whole entire fucking rebuttal on canon.
You're like, this game was here. Oh, actually, no, we're gonna put it over here instead.
Yeah, well, I think the problem is that the games weren't designed initially to have this timeline. They were just, they followed they were in the greater universe, but they didn't really have to have a timeline. They didn't have to have canon. They didn't have to have continuity. And then now that they've decided, or they think that fans want that, they've decided to try to retcon everything to fit neatly into these timelines, but they can't go back and release DLC for the first Zelda game. They can't release DLC for, and retcon and patch over,
on that point,
Majora's Mask.
Well, on that point, once again, just playing devil's advocate, to a certain extent, a lot of IPs aren't created with the intention of having a massive timeline because they don't know where the games end up. You know what I mean? They don't know if the IP itself is going to eventually branch off into something a lot larger than it actually is. And to a certain extent, that's what happened with Zelda. Zelda was never originally meant to be a massive IP and a massive property that would last across, 25 years? So I think it makes sense that a lot of things are still a little
25, try
iffy.
45, bud.
Well, once again, I'm just ballparking at this point.
87.
Right? I'm just once again, I rushed into the house, set up my camera, and then came on. So I'm trying to get all the points in my head out of my head. Five Nights at Freddy lore, anyone? Yeah, but with that being said, either way, I like that there's a timeline.
But
I think it's
so
cool.
when we're talking about, it wasn't designed originally with the timeline, but a lot of the games are now sprinkling connections, not direct connections, like the Ganondorf thing. When you put your mind to it and you think that it's the same guy, then you have to think, okay, well then that kind of gives you a background of why he's pissed off at everybody when he's coming back. It's like, yo, you stabbed me in the head. Yo, you stabbed me in the chest. I lived in a desert. You got grass. Like, what I mean? Like, it's like that was his whole point in Wind Waker. He's like, I had a barren desert land. I coveted that the Hyruleans had all this like lush area and shit. You know what I mean? So like it makes sense. It gives you a bit more background on him as a character, and technically his arc is still going. Then, if it's the same guy, does he redeem himself here? Probably not. But you know, there's a great fan comic, by the way, where Ganondorf does redeem himself. You should read into it. I forget what it's called, but like Ganondorf and Zelda Mary. Anyways, and then Link is Zelda's kid or adopted kid. It's really weird.
Stop!
It's really weird.
Stop!
I don't want it.
Yeah, I don't want this.
So Raven, I have to say that the weird thing about it is, you know, if you know, when you take modern games that become bigger IPs, usually it's like there's 1 or 2 games before they start to establish, you know, the official timeline, and they don't have a whole lot to retcon. Zelda had 18 games out before they established before they released the Hyrule Historia, which had the chronological, like the proposed chronological story.
That point in itself kind of is just Nintendo, and that brings up a whole entire new conversation with Nintendo being to a certain extent out of touch with their audience. You know what I mean? It's taken them years to do many things, and even now in 2021, Nintendo's still kind of, you know, dropping the ball. But Nintendo sponsor us, please. But
Nice.
I gotta say it. But yeah, just like anything else Nintendo's done, they've kind of been a lot later to the game than people wanted. I agree that they probably should have established a timeline going into Ocarina, Majora's Mask, and then kind of work from there, so that they didn't have to retcon, you know, certain events happening in specific order. But
yeah, I don't think they wanted to do that. I think every game stood alone up to that point, right? Because think of the games that came out before that. So you have Legend of Zelda and Adventure of Link. Those were sequels. We know that. That's, you know, it's in the game. It says it's a sequel. But besides those, everything else. So you got Link to the Past. That was
Connected to Link's Awakening, though.
That is mostly true. but again, like that game. So Link to the Past came out in what? So NA 92, and then Link Between Worlds came out in 2013. Like, we're not talking about, you know, in the greater franchise, it's like the next game after that was Link's Awakening, which we know even in the Zelda timeline doesn't take place in the actual world. So it's like in a standalone world, so that's fine. You have Ocarina of Time, which you could say kind of fits into the Zelda world, but then Majora's Mask, who uses the same characters and the same assets as Ocarina of Time, but they're different, so it's set in kind of a parallel world as well. So a lot of these games were really just a part of different places. Then you have Oracle of Seasons, Oracle of Ages. They're not even set in Hyrule. They're set in, I can't even remember the 2 places there.
Whatever. Go on.
Anyway, in two different places. Yeah, whether they're different universes or whether they're just like different countries, who knows? But like they're just, everything seems to be put in these ways to be set apart. And it wasn't really until Wind Waker.
Oh.
No, Wind Waker.
Yeah, it was Wind Waker.
Where they started to kind of draw a little bit of connection, because they were like, oh, this is a world, it's its own unique world, until you go back to the old Hyrule and they say, oh, there's a bit of history here, and then it kind of directly follows from Ocarina of Time, because they have the stained glass windows that show off the sages.
Yep.
So it means that those events actually took place in that world, and that's the first. So what are we talking about? From 1986 all the way till 2002, right?
Yep.
So we're talking like 18 years. There was no continuity in any of the games, and they didn't care how it was. That's just how they developed their franchise. And then it's after Wind Waker, and then they had so Minish Cap again is in its own world. Twilight Princess does some callbacks to the other games. Phantom Hourglass does callbacks to Wind Waker, and then Skyward.
I guess.
So we run into this situation where you're only looking at a handful of games, maybe 5 games in the whole series of, like, at that point 18 games that even had any callbacks to each other, and they decide to throw this all into this like timeline that doesn't necessarily make sense or is necessary, right?
Yeah, but once again, like, I also think that it is kind of in itself a product of its time, right? I made a point earlier about how blah blah blah, but like a lot of games and IPs at that point were didn't have existing universes and timelines and all of that, because once again that wasn't a norm back then. A lot of intellectual properties besides like, you know, Mario and stuff like that had maybe 1 or 2 releases and maybe had direct sequels, but they weren't creating an overall timeline. So with Zelda, once again, I get it. Like I think it is kind of ridiculous that a lot of this stuff doesn't make sense and all of that, but I enjoy a timeline. I enjoy having some kind of like map
where I agree
to
with
it
you.
all.
We agree that the reason why a timeline was even created is the fact that the Nintendo was like looking at what all the fans were doing with all this like speculation and just went, oh shit, and tried to find a way to make sense.
But see, like
Actually,
I can't say that personally, because for all I know, like they could have actually had a plan for a timeline and that just ended up getting screwed up along the way, right? Like they could have. Well, once again, this is all speculation, but for all we know, they could have had something set in place since the original games, but in turn, I guess that all changed because, you know, development, creating story, all of that, blah blah blah.
Well, and
right?
changing of teams and stuff, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
So what I want to say, the way that I agree with Raven is that going forward, I don't think it's a bad idea to have a blueprint as to where the games are going, right? I don't necessarily think that having a franchise that's so long-lived, just popping out like rando universes and random games, I don't think it makes for a good, coherent adventure. But I think that the core of Zelda has never really been about a continuous story. It's just about that childhood sense of adventure that the first game was based on, right? Miyamoto running through the forest and hitting stuff with a stick was like that was what it was all based on.
Yeah.
And I think that every game that's come to follow has kept that childhood sense of adventure alive, regardless of whether or not there's some long drawn backstory and ties to other games and this and that. And as long as they maintain that, and I think Breath of the Wild hit the nail on the head, like with that sense, right? Because it was really about curiosity and adventure, at like so much, even more fundamentally than I think a lot of its predecessors. That again, I think having a blueprint now going forward will make for more coherent games, and I think it'll make it more accessible to people who didn't play those early games and don't know the kind of random adventures that Link had gone on, you know, through the timeline or whatever, but can now pick up, say, Breath of the Wild and say, okay, we're at Breath of the Wild. This is what introduced me into Zelda. I like Breath of the Wild. Let's do a Breath of the Wild 2, and let's do another game that kind of derives from Breath of the Wild. Maybe it's not the same style of game, but you could seed it in the universe and still feel comfortable in where you are and what you're playing, right?
Yeah, well, the timeline definitely adds accessibility to newcomers. Absolutely.
Just catching up real quick on chat. Pocket does not like the idea of Ganondorf and Zelda being a thing. I'm just saying, read the damn thing. It was a pretty good comic. That's all I'm saying.
Gross. Gross. He's green.
Austin says,
Ganondorf
who
is
wrote
just
it and who published it?
it's like a fan one, a webcomic.
Oh, okay.
Austin says, wait, when did Ray turn Filipino? They still stand alone, and overarching timeline is neat. I think it all started with Majora's Mask, as Six mentioned there. The first actual sequel. And Spectre says, oh, it's a wild raven squaw while running through the forest with a stick. Excuse me.
Yes, hi chat. Sorry I'm late. Fleef, Maz, Hey Guy, Pocket, Spectre, y'all are amazing. Hello to you too.
Kisses.
Mwah, All the
but
kisses.
if we're talking about like converging timelines, that's what people want. Hyrule Warriors. People want that to be canon because it would solve, apparently, a lot of the issues people are having with converging all the timelines into one with Breath of the Wild. How many people
Are you able to elaborate, or is that going to spoil?
We can elaborate. I'm pretty sure. Again, guys.
Wait. I wanted to ask this, but I was obviously in the car. So are we just trying to avoid spoilers? Because I feel like a lot of the games that we're speaking on are at least 5 years old.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like we'll mention spoilers if we can't get around it, but like for certain like gotcha moments, like the end of Link's Awakening, if you do certain things, I don't want to spoil that particularly for anyone. But like in terms of like Hyrule Warriors, you can't get around it. grabbing from all the different games to make a coherent story, sort of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I actually actively avoided getting Hyrule Warriors and Age of Calamity, mostly just because I have a hard time with Dynasty Warrior games. It's just one of those IPs that, like, I tried really hard to like it, especially when Persona 5 Scramble came out. I really wanted to like it, but I just can't with that type of game.
Yeah, I can't either.
It's not my favorite mechanically speaking, like the way it's done, but
Like,
the way
hack and slash is great, but not that kind.
but the thing again, I'm a story person, and the way they kind of wove the stories together to try and make sense of it was kind of interesting. And basically, so the different pockets of each timeline exists in this one world, and it explains why Rudo shows up. Well, the theory is, rather, it explains why they mentioned Rudo in Breath of the Wild if it's the other timeline, because that Rudo showed up at one point. Or why the salt from the Great Sea exists in Breath of the Wild, because the Great Sea showed up in Hyrule Warriors, and part of it kind of got like shifted into the different timelines, and so the idea being
they're using portals to different timelines in order to branch all the timelines together, is what you're saying.
Exactly. That's what the underlining my understanding of it was, which is interesting. Again, it's an interesting way to explain things if you want to. But again, Nintendo doesn't want.
Seems like a very Deus Ex Machina way to like
but
just kind of throw stuff together.
What isn't do a Deus Ex in The Legend of Zelda? You get a Triforce and you cause the temple to crush that thing in Skyward Sword, which I forget what it's called. Like, that's how you solve the problem.
I thought the idea was you were stealing it away, but okay.
You know what I mean, though. You know what I mean? Like, come on. The Triforce is one big MacGuffin right there to begin with. But,
a little bit, yeah.
But that was my understanding. And it's not a bad one. I don't think so. But like again, then you have to explain a bunch of other stuff. But again, Ganondorf in that one was Ganondorf. Again, bringing the whole. It's one guy. It's one guy, guys. But I do think it's an interesting game from a story perspective, and that's why I feel like if they could somehow balance in Breath of the Wild 2 the mechanics of Breath of the Wild 1, but with a story that can somehow still be part of it, I'd be like more invested.
And please make it more fleshed out than the first one.
And so I don't know if you heard that part, Raven. We were talking about how the side quests were kind of just not organic. It's just here's a guy.
Yeah, side quests weren't organic. Y'all hate DLC.
Listen, DLC is not a bad thing if it makes sense. Like, if you're like having like a game like Destiny, that works, but not for like a huge like story lore heavy game.
But once again, like the tough thing is that's kind of how the market's been as of recent. Like now we start looking at even games that don't have existing DLCs after the fact, or like DLCs that don't exactly add to the main storyline, but in turn you find the story through I guess a subtext throughout the game, right? Now a big example of that is every single Soulsborne game.
True.
Like you don't learn anything playing through the main storyline and actually watching the cutscenes where you think you would receive story, and then in turn you actually learn more things as you look at items and you interact with things and you run into other characters within that world, and even at that point you don't fully understand everything. Like a few more examples of that is to a certain, like every other game that's come out in the past 5 years, Cyberpunk doesn't give you a full handle on what the storyline is until you start searching for things. Like anything else like that.
That was kind of the whole point of Cyberpunk, though, because Cyberpunk was trying to grasp onto its MMO elements, even when they started changing like what Cyberpunk would be when it came out.
Yeah, but once again, like it's just to the point that like most games are doing that nowadays. Now, obviously, even with Destiny in itself, you don't learn anything about the game until you start doing random side quests and start learning or reading the texts you get from specific weapons and stuff like that. Mind you, I do agree fully and utterly, and it's just me playing devil's advocate. I would much rather have, Breath of the Wild 2 with enough story, but now you're trying to balance that out, right? You're trying to balance that out between story and gameplay, and obviously gameplay expanded into mechanics, because once again, that's Legend of Zelda. Mechanically, that's what a lot of people are drawn to, getting new abilities and getting new items to help you progress through this world. But once again, if you add too much story, that in turn could be an issue. Now you
Skyward
see
Sword.
things like Skyward Sword, and even just moving past the Zelda genre into other games that have done heavy story but lack of gameplay. Azura's Wrath, great game, way too story heavy. And like you could see that in many other examples, right?
Shenmue.
Mind
But you could balance that, and I think that the thing is, you're coming from the entire Zelda library, which has had this certain type of storytelling, which was very direct, to now it's like completely absent, and you have to fish for it. But even when you fish for it and get it all, it's really not enough, or not nearly as much as you would get in any other story, or Zelda story. So I think that's the disappointment, and I think that they could do a better job of balancing that out for future game.
Hoping so.
Oh yeah,
Hoping
for
so.
sure. For
And-
sure. Hopefully,
Yeah.
like I would much rather get a lot more context from my adventures versus me actually having to actively search out for certain things in order to understand a minuscule rule of that world. It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense to me.
Well, and I think the whole reason why I'm so salty about the lack of like context and story and what have you in the first breath is just because of they had like years and years to make this game, and then all of a sudden it got rushed at the end because there was a deadline coming up and the story got sacrificed over mechanics, which made me a little bit sad because I wanted just a little bit more, because that's what I like about, that's what drew me to like Zelda as a franchise, is just the world that I'm in and like the lore attached to it. I just wanted I wanted more out of that.
Agreed.
So I guess an open question to the forum: are you guys more open to the idea of having a story-based Zelda or a mechanically heavy Zelda? You know what I mean? Because a lot of people, you know, like myself, I played the original Ocarina of Time, and what drew me in wasn't exactly the story, it was my adventure itself and being able to use the mechanics to traverse the world, right? And like, yes, I know, I could see like on Leah, I figure you don't even have to answer because obviously you're more story driven. I'm assuming the same with Joe as well,
Yeah.
because Joe is very much a story driven person, right?
6 might
Yeah.
be mechanics, so.
So the thing is, like, you don't have to necessarily sacrifice one for the other, and that's the thing that I'm really hoping that
But that-
Nintendo's gonna get a grip on.
But that's
For
not
them.
necessarily the question, right? The question is that if you had to choose, are you leaning more into mechanics or story? Because once again, this
Mechanics.
is
I would just redo Breath of the Wild again.
I would just redo it.
I would-
Like, okay,
Yeah, it sounds
like, fair
stupid,
enough.
but like I said, I think that Breath of the Wild hit a note that was much higher than any of the other series in its base, like in its primary tenant, which is this like childhood sense of adventure, right? And like I don't know if that's the words that that Miyamoto had like said specifically, but he basically said that like, this is what I want to create in this world, is this sense of adventure and this like discovery and all this stuff. And I think that Breath of the Wild really nailed it. And so if they need to sacrifice that type of stuff in order to just put in like a bunch of dialogue or like a cooler, you know, story, then I would definitely forego the story any day. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and
same-
that's
same
where I
here.
would
But-
answer to the contrary. I would answer to the contrary of like me being like lamenting the lack of story. I would pick mechanics over story, just because, you know, I liked how much freedom and how much exploration power I had in Breath of the Wild. The problem is that when as a franchise, when you set a precedent of having this, you know, a very expansive world, tons of lore attached to it, and all these like, you know, big storytelling elements attached to it, to all of a sudden like strip it away, kind of alienates the people that were brought in based off of story versus being brought in through adventure. So I just feel like you're right, Six, they didn't have to sacrifice one for the other, but you know, I would still, like, if I had to get rid of something, I would get rid of more story for mechanics, just because that's where I derived my fun.
I still stick with the story, only because if you strip the story, not that there's nothing like it's what Six was saying. It's like the adventure, right? But then it becomes like an open sandbox, and then it's kind of like, okay, I guess I make my own story. Is that the idea? But I'm a big person on like you said, lore, story. That's why I love movies. I love going to the movies. I don't want to have to go to an outside source to find out more about what the world is of the movie. I want the movie to tell me this is the world I'm watching, right? Because most games these days are pretty much like high-ass budget movies at this point. If they're not solely like Detroit Being Human, I thought that was a very interesting like story, the setup and everything. The mechanics were shit, but the story had me going, right? If you have a good story, I think it's possible. Like a Wolf Among Us, same thing. You get choices for the story, but it's ultimately the story that I was like, holy shit! I played this one episode, and I'm like, I want to keep playing because the story's got me pulled in, kind of thing.
So obviously, to argue the other side of that point, when I go to the movies, I go because I want to watch a movie. I want a story to be told to me. I want a world to be built in front of my eyes, and I don't need anything to do with it. My hands don't need to touch any of it. I just want to sit there and watch. I'm playing a game, you know, once again, like obviously on your point, Wolf Among Us, the Walking Dead series, basically any Telltale game, and then Detroit Become Human, blah, blah, blah. Those games are marketed to be story games. But when I play a video game, I want something mechanically that is fun. You know, I could have a boring storyline, but majority of your time within that game is going to be spent playing the game, you know? I would much rather have something with interesting, whether it be combat, puzzle solving, anything like that. And then, yes, cool, like I'm happy to have storyline along the way. But in that, let's say, 100-hour playthrough of Breath of the Wild, you know, I spend 80-90% of that in the game actually playing the game, you know?
Yeah,
so,
and I have to say, like, the story is important. I'm not going to say that it's not, but I'm just looking at a list of the top selling games by units sold, I believe. And number one, obviously Minecraft, and that has zero story and just mechanics.
What do you mean? You killed the Ender Dragon?
I was about to say that too.
So let's say, but let's say that the story is actually something to do with the Ender Dragon, right? That okay, there's a tyrant Ender Dragon, you got to kill it. Like that's the whole story. No backs, like no details, no this and that. Like that's it, right? Like that's Breath of the Wild story right there. Is there's a big bad guy in the middle, go kill him. But the rest, like the actual story, is your adventure through the world. The next several ones, you have Grand Theft Auto 5, which has a story, but I think 99% of the game is just played the way you play the game, or it's playing RP or doing some weird stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Then you have Tetris, Wii Sports. Again, Wii Sports, I'm sure there's some story kind of shuffled in there, but it's not like the forefront of the game. You have PUBG. You have Super Mario Bros, the first one. Pokemon Red, Blue, Green, and Yellow. And again, Pokemon, like the story, like you defeating the champion is not a whole lot of a story. Like getting the gym badges is not exactly the whole Pokemon experience. That's like the tutorial to the game, and then you get into the meat and potatoes of like actually playing Pokemon. You have Mario Kart 8, Wii Fit Plus, and more Tetris, Pac-Man, and then Red Dead Redemption 2, which again has a story, but a lot of the game is doing side quests and exploring the world that's set there. Terraria, same thing. It has like a story, quote unquote, but it's more about the building and the exploring and the getting used to the world. And the list kind of goes on. Not a lot of games have a whole lot of story in the top. I'm gonna say a lot, at least top 40 or so.
Yeah, 6. I'm actually looking at that same list. Most of them, you're right, they have story, but the mechanics above all are the thing that make it. Even like Witcher 3 is at like number 19. And that's still like, yeah, really heavy story, really heavy lore and everything based off of a novel. But again, it's about the mechanics of the game more than the actual storytelling.
And I think that we live in a world where we have various forms of media. And I'm not going to say that video games are a bad way to tell a story, because they're not. They're actually a fantastic way to tell stories. Yeah. And I play a lot of games that have very deep and rich storytelling and stories in general. But you know, we have movies for that. We have books for that. Video games, we have this unique ability to add mechanics to it, right? You can't go to the movie theater and have like crazy mechanics where like if you jump around, like things are gonna happen.
D-Box would argue with you.
I want to make Tom Cruise do a flip.
D-Box.
Yeah, like, but we do. But video games are in this unique position where we can utilize mechanics to have an extra level of fun, whether there's a story or no story, and or if we're just creating our own story. Like, I think video games are a great way to have a story, not be given a story, but to like put out a story. And I think that shows a lot in people playing Grand Theft Auto 5, doing the RP things. Like those big streamers who do Grand Theft Auto 5 RP. They are literally creating their own story in the sandbox of this video game, right? In the setting of this video game, which has its own story, but who cares about that? It's about creating your own story. And I think Breath of the Wild does that. Right. Okay. Did you jump off the Great Plateau and go south, where there's like literally no main story parts? Maybe, or maybe you just went to Kakariko Village and talked to Impa, and then went to Hatno Village and then went to the Zord place and got the Great Beast or whatever. Like, maybe you followed Nintendo's guided story through Breath of the Wild, or maybe you were just like, screw it, I like Gerudos, I'm gonna go to the Gerudo place first. Or like my son, who is like, I want to see the lava, and then go to the go to
100%.
Death Mountain and see the
I'm
lava.
not arguing
right?
that mechanics will make the fun in the game, but the thing is, a lot of those games were designed on the fact that the story wasn't a big element, whereas Zelda, the story has taken kind of like one of the points in the front of it. And so when you pick up a Zelda game, you expect there to be like really said, there's a story that are more like in depth, like lore into the game. That's your expectation going in. So that's why I'm reading Pocket. I like story more than mechanics, and I heard Breath of the Wild wasn't story driven, so Pocket didn't play, apparently, from my understanding of this. Give me a story I can sink my teeth into, Suspector. Mechanics can make or break a game, but there's also no story when it can also make or break a game too. Ostium jumps in. I know I'm only a first-person shooter player, but mechanics are everything to me regardless of game, but most games have lore or a small story even if they're not a story game. Even Valorant, COD, Tarkov all have lore. So if you have that's the thing, there's some kind of I'm not saying you can't have fun with that in a sandbox game, but like with The Legend of Zelda, it's kind of part of Zelda to have story into it.
And you have games like these first-person shooters and especially Overwatch, which absolutely do not even need a story. Just release random heroes. Who cares?
Yeah.
What does it do? It's just about mechanics. You're gonna be shooting people, but they have such rich and deep stories that you could just spend hours and hours, comics and the cut scenes and all that stuff that are so good and so poignant. But they're completely not necessary, but they're there, and I think that they make the game all the better.
Yeah, it's like terminals in the Halo franchise. Like, if you want to go and deep dive into the lore, all the nerds are going to go and find the terminals and go watch all of these cutscenes that are absolutely not necessary. But can you go through the game and still enjoy like the super loose, like aliens bad, save the galaxy? Like, you can still enjoy it that way. But if you want more, the option is still there for people to enjoy.
And see, that's my point being, right? My point being is that at the end of the day, we are playing video games here, right? So in my eyes, obviously, I lean toward mechanics. Mechanics is what makes or breaks a game. Mind you, you can find a great, I don't know how to put it, coagulation of fucking story and fucking mechanics. An example of that, which once again is a piss poor example of story, but a way that you can incorporate mechanics into story is Destiny itself. Destiny 2, especially as you get to like later raids, a lot of those mechanics actually feed into the story itself, making the world a lot bigger. Mind you, yes, all the way back to it, mechanics are king, fuck story. No, I'm joking. We should catch up with chat.
Okay, so hold on, just before you do that, I just want to interject. So I think if you take it to the extreme, right? So you have two sides. One is I'm trying to think of a good in-game example. Actually, Hades is a good game example. So if you take Hades and you strip it of its story, what is it? It's still a game, but it's just like a dungeon crawling. And you just like try to get to the end and beat the last boss, and that's it, right? But if you strip all of the gameplay and just leave the dialogue, what is it? It's just a book. Like an on-screen book.
Yeah.
Right? So you're not even in the same media. So really, I think that if it is going to be considered a video game, mechanics have to play a very, important role in whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
But again, I think all this boils down to is, regardless of what our like final verdict is on what we should give up in terms of the other, we're talking about the first party developer that knows what they're doing, and they should not have to sacrifice anything putting out a game like Breath of the Wild 2.
Agree with that.
And yeah, they should be able to find the balance. Now, what would I prefer?
Know-
I would
know
prefer to
what
have
they're
more story.
doing. Know
I
what
would
they're
prefer
doing.
to have more story in a Breath of the Wild 2 than is present in Breath of the Wild 1.
Yeah.
But I don't want them to sacrifice any bit of the exploration or the neat mechanics that they input into the world in order to give you that sense of discovery and exploration and that fun, unique adventure that you had.
Yeah.
I guess
So
the way it
Joe
boils
and
down-
I were talking about this before, right? Like at the end of it, like we were, what was it, on the drive when I was driving you to work? We were talking that, I was saying that I think mechanically they have Breath of the Wild 2 down.
Yeah.
Obviously they have a solid skeleton with the first one, and obviously them trying to incorporate some new ways to interact with the world. Their main focus right now should just be on storyline. And of course, once again, as a big mechanic guy, I still want story. I want something to kind of sink my teeth into, and I would like something to kind of push the narrative forward so that in turn my character actually has motivation to do whatever the fuck he wants instead of just wandering around trying to see if I could shove a big block up monster's butt. But yeah, like at the end of the day, I think mechanics are king. And once again, that is very dependent on the type of gamer you are, because once again, we have lots of different gamers. I would assume many people in the chat are more story-based gamers versus anything else, so mechanics kind of falls short. But I'm playing a video game with a controller. I'm not doing that at the movie theater. Well, if I'm going to the movies, I want story. If I'm playing a game, I want something to play.
And I would argue that having a greater story does make the game more accessible, because there are a lot of people who aren't self-driven when it comes to video games, and they need some type of objective that they want to reach for. And so in Breath of the Wild, a lot of people fell off because they were like, I don't really know what to do. I know I'm supposed to go and like get these 4 things, but like, why am I doing this? Like, what is the greater purpose here? Whereas I think if they had a little bit more ties to the world and they felt like they're more immersed, that they wouldn't have fallen off, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Catch up on chat real quick. Spectre says Halo is hella story driven.
Agreed.
I would argue, like, yes, it is quite story driven, but all of the flavor text that they put into it is not necessary to enjoy the game, is what I'm trying to argue.
See, that's how I feel. I feel like it's got both, but I'd say Halo is also one of the exact examples of games
Mechanics
that
over story.
mechanics over story, but also hiding lore amongst other forms of media. And like we see that with the whole Halo collection of books. We see that with a lot of the other forms of media that they've put out, where a lot of people didn't learn many of the things. A lot of people didn't even realize fucking Master Chief's name until they read the first book.
Yeah.
It's like it kind of proves the point. But yeah, continue with chat.
For me personally, you could have the best story ever, but if your mechanics like movement interact as dog, then I'm not gonna play it, says Ostium. Sign my guy, welcome on in. You heard it here first. Mechanics are king. Fuck story. Quoting Raven.
Woo! 2021. Yeah.
But Ostium says, I'm over it. Just give me a gun and let me click someone's forehead with good movement. And then Sign my guy, the original creators' version of Legend of Zelda, they wanted to make a game where if you see those mountains, you can go to those mountains. And I think that harkens back to what Raven said. Like, they have the mechanics down now. This is the like really good like way to play a Legend of Zelda game, from physics to where you can go, what you can do. They just need to implement. I think we all agree we just need to implement story a bit better and like character development. Because especially in this particular type of game, there's so many races, so many different characters to interact with. The land has so much lore behind it, history. Like, give us that.
Yeah, and I would also make the argument that I felt more motivation in previous Zelda games to help the princess just because of her characterization. I liked it better in the other games, whereas in Breath, like all those like flashbacks that you get of her and everything, I felt like her characterization didn't make me care enough. Like, she just kind of seemed so just impotent as a character. I felt no draw to be all like, yes, I must protect and help the princess in her goal and sealing Ganon away and all this other whatever. I just needed more from her. I liked the fact that, before she was a little bit sassy. She kind of had like that, well, I'm in charge here. Like, she actually had a stronger personality in the previous games than she did in this one. She just kind of felt like, oh, like I'm soft and I wanted her to be a strong character, and she just wasn't.
Well, I feel like in many of the Zelda games, they portray her as the damsel in distress. You know what I mean? It's just that
They
that
do, but
concept-
she
that
still had
concept
stronger confidence, though.
Oh, for sure.
Agreed,
In
agreed.
other games, she totally does. But like, I feel like I would like, a strong, independent Zelda that don't need no.
Yeah, that would be nice.
That would be nice. That would be
That would
nice
be
for
really
them
nice.
to work together to save the world instead of Link busting his balls, and then we fall within that whole like, oh, damsel in distress trope. Man has to save the woman. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Like,
So I think my biggest disconnect story-wise for Breath of the Wild was in the like general other audience. So like the other characters of the game, didn't matter what race they were. Everyone just seemed to be well situated in the world as it existed, even though 100 years ago, like almost everyone was wiped out. Everything was like in super, state of disrepair and everything, and people are just rebuilding over 100 years. But people seem to be like generally happy and generally fine. And I was just like, why do we have to kill Ganon? Like, if everything is okay right now and he's kind of sealed away, like I get that there's the imminent danger of him breaking forth at any moment. But obviously, as you play the game, it doesn't feel like that because you can just take as much time as you want to complete it. So you don't really get that imminent danger aspect of it. And I think that they could have portrayed that more in the other characters, like all of these other people kind of maybe saying like, oh, I'm actually like pretty spooked. I saw some weird stuff around the castle, like anything to indicate that this threat is actually coming. Because obviously we know it's not. Obviously we know that you beat Ganon and you're going to save the day. But
Yeah.
if they portrayed that better within the other characters, I think it would have given you more drive to be like, oh man, maybe I should move on and stop picking flowers. or
Yeah,
whatever.
but I would also argue like that also kind of grounds it in like a very realistic sort of sense, because Ganon's been technically sealed away for 100 years, and like, yeah, sure, like, this has been going on for 100 years, but 100 years of seeing the same dark cloud looming over that castle, it's like that just becomes their normal.
I
So there
suppose,
is no imminent danger for the people in the world. They just see that and they're like, like, yeah, like we were all really super worried about it, but it's been like 100 years. Like, that's just gonna stay where it's at. It's like nothing's moved. Like, we're not concerned. But like, I think they could have amped that up a little bit more and gave you more of that imminent danger, and you feel the dissonance between like, but this is gonna happen, and everyone's like, it's fine. Like, if they dialed it up a little bit, then you would feel like that sense of pressure to actually do something about it.
So kind of like what they did in Majora's Mask, where they know shit's about to end, and the moon's over them, and they can't do anything about it. So how do they react? The reactions basically to the situation should be more, like, I guess, grounded in reality.
In a sense, yeah.
Like, I think there would have been more people spooked and worried about what was to come than there, because I don't really remember any characters really being like super pressed about what was to come if nobody stopped Ganon, basically.
yeah, but
Right.
on Simon Guy's point, you have to realize 100 years later, people have died, and children don't take stories as seriously. That could just
So,
be a
Hylians
framework
live-
of the time frame, right?
So Hylians live longer than like humans, like in our world, and actually a lot of the races do. Like, obviously some people have died since the 100 years, but they're said to live
going
longer
through
than-
going through each of the races, like what's the average time span? Because I thought Gorons were sitting at around like 80, 90 years, something like that.
So the Gorons are the humans, is what you're telling me?
Well, I mean, like, but like all the beings that exist within the Breath of the Wild world, like how many of them were around during the original Calamity?
I think a lot, because let's just think about Gerudos for the first thing, right? Gerudos only like spawn a male child, or only birth a male child every 100 years, or so it's said, but like they haven't birthed one in a long time because of Ganondorf. So they must live more than 100 years to be able to not only have a child get to maturity, but also breed with that child. I know that's weird, but so just Gerudos alone have to live for at least like 120 years, right? And that would be with like a 20-year-old person having, relations with a 120-year-old person, right?
Hmm.
So, yeah, so that's just to start with them. But I think Hylians live like 100 years or so. I don't think they're like us, where they, our general life expectancy is around like 70 years old. I think they live like 100 or 100 plus, because Impa, who's alive, was there during the Calamity, and she's still alive during Breath of the Wild. So she's way more than 100 years old, right? Because she would have been in her 20s or something when.
Impa, Robbie, and Purah lived longer than 100 years.
Yeah. I guess my argument I'm trying to make is like generations aside, or like the cycle of like people becoming like whatever. I'm just speaking from like getting accustomed to the situation you're living in at the time. It's like, if for example, like you're living in like a war-torn country, that's your new normal, and it slowly just becomes so normalized that you're just kind of like, this is just another Tuesday. So like, of course the characters in this world are just going to be like, this is just our normal, so we're not going to feel as urgently about it as, say, someone who, for example, Link, wakes up after like almost dying from a battle, being like, oh my god, like everything, like I have to fix this right now. But everyone around them has experienced this for 100 years, being like, it's not going anywhere anytime soon, so we can take our time with it, kind of thing.
Doesn't even Link just wake up and he has no memories?
Yeah.
That's right.
So he has no memories. He has no sense of urgency to go solve the problem.
Yeah, so maybe that's like a story, maybe that was one story point that kind of like maybe made you feel less urgent. I don't know.
Sorry, my guys, or let's catch up here. You also have to realize 100 years later, people have died and children don't take their stories as seriously. In Breath of the Wild, you ran into very little people that were around 100 years ago. If you look at the people, though, there aren't many that experienced the Calamity. It's mostly Impa, a few Gorons, and a handful of Zoras, and Robbie and Purah. The Zoras have the most, but they blame Link for what happened 100 years ago.
Yeah, they fucking they blame the shit out of him.
They're so mad.
Yeah, they don't like him when he shows up. Have you guys ended up in their city without running into the prince first?
No.
There's shit talking. There's bare shit talking, because you usually run into, what is it, the prince on the bridge, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and then he's just like, yeah, come through, and you're like, all right, and then you run into a bunch of lightning people. You can actually end up there without running into him, and there's a full interaction that most people don't see.
Oh.
I'm not gonna spoil it, but it's not that it's not world breaking, and it's not gonna totally change perspective on things. But I think it's a cool
because they're still gonna be mad at you anyway.
Yeah.
Which is cool hilarious, because technically it's Zelda's fault.
Yeah. Still saying it should be the Legend of Link.
I mean, Adventure of Link got close. Link's Awakening got close.
Yeah.
But just backpedaling on the topic of Zelda and characterization in this versus other Zeldas, I do agree with Aurelia on that. And then again with the story, the main reason I even liked, I put that in air quotes, Skyward Sword, was because I actually could believe that Link and Zelda grew up together and that they have that kind of a connection. And then, and again, she wasn't completely helpless, because every time you came to go save her, she was already gone, because Impa and her left and did what they had to do. So she's already doing her own thing. So she's already has her own mission, and she's way few steps ahead of you. So every time I get there, I'm like, that's what made me want to keep going with the game, was because, okay, well, I'm gonna save her this time. I'm like, oh shit, you just missed it. I'm like, come on, man.
See, more of that from Zelda, please. More of her kind of having her own agency and being a partner in the adventure, as opposed to being a foil.
But that I just wanted to bring that up, because that's what kind of made me oh, sick. Okay, that's fucking sick. I don't have to, I'm not saving you. You're technically not even in trouble. I'm just trying to catch up to you.
that once again, that would be great, but once again, most of the portrayals of who Zelda is Zelda, damsel in distress. Link must come save her. Ganon/Ganon.
I mean, she's always been a powerful character, but she's usually in a position where she needs someone else to rescue her.
I will
she's
argue
powerful in the sense of she's the shrine maiden trope, where it's she's got insane spiritual or magical power, but it's encapsulated in this soft, frail body that needs to be protected, kind of thing. It's very tropey.
I would argue though that Twilight Princess, she actually isn't displayed like that, because technically she's gone for half the game, because you have a new character to dot on, and that's
Yeah.
Midna, right? Who's technically your partner, but like you try to save Midna, and then that's what leads you to Zelda, and then Zelda disappears. So like you're not really saving Zelda. Zelda actually is like barely a main plot point in that game when you think about it. She shows up at the end to
Yeah.
help you, and that's it. And you're like, huh?
Well, probably hence the whole Twilight Princess thing. You're dealing with the Twilight Princess,
Yeah.
not the one that you know.
Right.
Mhm.
So that was, I thought, also another interesting turn on that. Any last thoughts on the Breath of the Wild story versus mechanics and where we're going with this game?
As much as I love mechanics, needs more story.
Okay. Agreed. 6?
Needs more story, and it needs to be, I
Don't
guess,
put it in a
somewhat-
DLC pack, please,
Yeah.
Nintendo.
Absolutely.
Yeah, not DLC pack. There should be enough story to give us context from in the forefront for the casual players who aren't trying to run 100% runs. But give us a lot. Give us a lot to sink my teeth into. I want to spend months doting over
Yeah.
the story and just being like, oh my god, this happened, so cool. But
6, Leah, anything else?
Oh, that about covers it.
Okay.
Yeah, I've said my piece on this.
Okay, so we're gonna do one last topic, then we're gonna do the game, and then that's how we're gonna end the stream. But the last topic is gonna be really short. It's really just for stupid fun. But the cartoon.
I'm leaving. I'm out.
It's me.
It's funny because so I guess for those who don't know, because I didn't get really talking about my experience, I've played every single main game, Zelda game, and a few of the offshoots. Never watched the cartoon.
It's only 13
Besides
episodes.
the memes that have showed up, like excuse me.
Yeah, I've never actually
princess."
watched it, but I've seen
yeah.
clips of it on YouTube and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've watched quite a few more episodes than I would care to admit. They're all equally awful, but
I'm
you
pretty
know,
sure.
we're here.
I'm pretty sure I've seen them all, but because of the way they spaced it out when it aired live, I always thought there was more than there actually were. But there's only 13
Yeah.
episodes, which is why it never showed up that often on TV. But
I can't with the cartoon because they make Link into like the
Chad?
scummiest character
Yeah.
ever. Like he is such a scumbag.
It's okay. So, what was the idea behind the portrayal of Link in the cartoon? Because
that he was a hero. He did have the moves, but he always wanted to put the moves on Zelda.
like Johnny
Yeah.
Bravo.
And like in like the most like dirty way possible. Like it was just constantly he all did it to like incentivize Zelda to like, give it up. And that's what rubbed me the wrong way because I was just like, nah, like you can't like if you're gonna like lord this character up as like, your hero, like your example of like what it means to be a hero and all of that, do you really want him to be a dude that just does it for the nookie?
Right?
Or the hypothetical nookie?
Sounds like
I mean-
18-year-old me.
Yeah, this is why you gotta leave the story a little bit open so you can interject your own personality into Link. And if that's your main goal, I mean, go for it. Right?
once again,
If you
I
just
think
want to beat Mario so that you can like get that kiss from the princess at the end, then so be it.
Yeah.
But I think that's where the difference once again of us talking about a game versus some kind of visual media like a cartoon. You have to add in more flavor to the character, whereas in a video game, obviously the intention is for you to imprint yourself onto Link, and find a way to be able to connect with the main character or in turn voiceless protagonist. But with the cartoon, they fuck that shit up.
Yeah. No thanks.
I think that's one of the things that breaks and it makes it not very Zelda-esque is that the main character was supposed to be just like you playing this character, and you were supposed to be able to interject yourself into the role of the character, whereas in the show they gave him a personality. He didn't have a personality before, but now he does, and it's not what you wanted it to be.
Yeah, it's pretty awful. And like I will say, like another thing, just the whole show from start to finish is kind of a bit of a dumpster fire because the animation is sloppy. I'm pretty sure it's like 12 frames per second with like that double frame that like helps save you on like making more cells. But on top of that, you also have garbage voice acting because it was literally just them trying to cash in on people liking the Legend of Zelda video game. It was just they wanted to get something out there to just like pull people in, being like, "Oh, you like this thing? Well, look, there's a like this is how we'll get kids to watch the Super Mario Brothers Super Show." By putting that in.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention that.
And it just became like the subject of meme material like 20 years later.
Yo, Mario, the guy who played Mario was Canadian, I think, though.
Never mind, like 30, 40
Was
years
he?
later.
I think so.
Was he Canadian?
Lou something.
Oh.
I think he was a wrestler, a Canadian wrestler. I could be wrong. Don't correct me on that.
Yeah, he did an anti-drug PSA in the 80s.
Lou Albano?
Yeah, that guy. I think he's Canadian, right?
Let me check. Italian American professional wrestler.
Damn.
No,
I was
wrong guy. It's the wrong guy. It's the wrong guy. That's Captain Lou Albano.
No, that is him. That is him.
Oh, that is
No,
him?
yeah, he lives
He's
in
a
America
professional
now. He was,
wrestler?
I'm pretty sure he was born in. Yeah, he played. Didn't he play Hulk?
No,
He
that's
was
Lou
born,
Ferrigno.
He was born in
Oh, okay.
Italy.
Oh.
Yeah, he was born
I
in
thought he was
Italy.
Canadian. Either way, he was a wrestler though. I knew that much. But a funny guy. And Luigi was supposed to be the younger brother, but he was way older than he was. That's what I
Oh
remember.
my god.
And don't get me started on Toad's voice. We're totally getting off topic of Zelda, but Toad's voice in that cartoon could grate fucking like my ears like nails on a chalkboard. Oh.
No, thank you.
So the guy who adapted the Zelda show
Mm-hmm.
is one of the writers on He-Man: Masters of the Universe. Bob Forward.
Like
The
which
original
one?
He-Man or the new one?
No, the original.
Oh, that makes sense.
1984.
Oh,
That
okay.
just makes sense.
That makes
Yeah.
sense based on timeline, yeah.
Yep.
The cartoon was one of the reasons Nintendo doesn't want to do a Zelda show. I thought the reason Nintendo doesn't want to do anything with their IPs is because it's Super Mario Brothers movie, but that's just my opinion.
I mean,
Yeah.
maybe they just had a lot of bad, bad situations trying to adapt their media.
Oh, fair. Okay. So that is it for the cartoon though. Great staple of my childhood, I guess. But so we're gonna play the game one last time. For those who don't know, we're playing the guess the song / game. If you can't guess the song from Legend of Zelda. And for those that are in the podcast, you can watch the share screen. Type your answers in chat. Type your answers in chat. So let me pause the music.
Wait, let me get to the share screen. There we go. Watch it. Cool.
Okay, and here. So if you guys are ready in podcast,
Yes.
6.
Yep.
Okay, here we go. Here's the next one.
What town? Fuck.
I know where it's from. I'm having an issue with what it's called too.
Like you just put the game. If you just get the game, put down the game where you think that's from. Nice. Oh my god. Skyward Sword, Majora's Mask, Link Between Worlds. Main town theme. Okay. Let's see what we got. I'll give a few seconds for people in chat to catch up. Hey, here we go. Ooh, not even close.
Skyward
From
Sword.
Woods, but it was Skyward Sword.
Wow.
Oh.
Did you just guess Skyward Sword though? Or?
No. I actually kind of started playing it recently.
Oh, I see. There you go.
So
Oh.
you know how the amiibo, the Wolf Link amiibo.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I decided to start playing Skyward Sword. I don't know why.
Okay. Next one.
Ooh, sounds mischievous.
I know this one.
Oh, I don't even fucking know that one. Doesn't sound familiar.
It's from Majora's Mask.
It's
No, it's not. Sorry, it's from that's. Oh God, what's his name? It's the owl theme
Yep. Oh.
from.
Gabora, whatever.
Yeah, Kipora
Yeah.
Gabora.
Oh, look at that. Simon guy got the owl. Okay. Let's see. Yep. Ocarina of Time. That's it.
Oh my god.
You guys are good. All right.
Damn.
2 more, and then we'll call it. Oh, I know this one.
Wait. Oh no, it's so familiar.
Again. Run it again.
Okay. Shit. I gotta go back though. Okay.
Just hit castle theme.
I'm gonna say Link to the Past. Castle
Yeah,
theme.
I'm saying Link to the Past.
I
Dark
have
World.
no
Dark World.
idea.
Link to the Past.
Oh, you might be right.
Okay. Death Mountain. Shit. I was close.
Hey, we got Link to the Past. Joe. We
Okay.
got Link to the Past.
half
that's
credit.
all we need.
All right. Last one. Last one. Last one.
Clearly the song of bullshit.
Oh wait. Is this?
It's
Run it
from Wind
again.
Waker. That's
Run it again.
Okay. I gotta go back a bit more. It's Wind Waker. The town with the the windmill. Title theme. Okay, he says Outset Island. Okay, that's the guess. Cuckoo theme, Dark World theme.
yeah.
Wind Waker.
Outside Island's the first one you start on. It's not the windmill place.
Oh, okay. Well,
That's
yeah.
Windfall Island.
Yeah.
There you go, Simon
Oh.
Guy.
Sounds like a chicken theme to me.
Because
How do we
Sounds like
not
there should be
have
chickens around.
Song of Storms appear?
it's probably in the thing. I just haven't gotten to it. You want to do one more? We'll do one more. One more.
One more.
All right.
One more. One more. Wow, it's like I'm going on adventure.
It does not even sound familiar. I'm gonna guess Adventure to Link just because I don't know where the hell that's from.
Run that again. Run that again. My favorite is the last 2 seconds when it goes. I'm actually kind of
Oops.
l-
Oh, there you go.
leaning into
There you go. It was
Sword,
forced.
yeah, I
I would
would've-
never guess that.
I would not have
shit.
got
Oh
that.
my
Oh
god, really?
Yeah. Seriously, fuck. I thought it was Adventure Link because I'm like I didn't recognize it, but clearly it's a game I've never played. So there we go.
Damn.
All right. All right. So, guys, that is our podcast today. I want to thank all our
Woo.
guests and our special Raven replacement, Rainbow Man, wherever you are
Oh,
out
me.
there.
Oh, me.
But there you go.
Let me get everyone else.
Choo-choo, motherfucker.
And make sure you check out Aurelia Borealis. Is he going to play?
Aurora Borealis. At this time of
They
year,
should.
at this time of day, in this part of the country, localized entirely within your kitchen. Yes.
In
This is
Six
great.
Station, with you on Six Station. When can everybody see you guys next? Aurelia.
Me?
Yes.
I will be back next week on Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I will be playing some more Blinks the Time Sweeper.
Whoa!
Ooh. And
Bring
6?
me back.
I stream Monday to Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern till about 1 a.m.
Hey guys, check them both out. And Mr. Raven Squaw,
Hey, what's up, man?
when are you on next?
Usual deal, Monday at 4 p.m. But, you know, since Joe ran early, maybe I'll run a stream today.
Maybe.
Maybe.
As for me, I'll be back on Wednesday for our Gun Plus stream. We'll probably continue painting the kit we were painting last time, 4 p.m. Eastern time. Just want to thank everybody
Yeah.
out, everyone who's
Fuck the neighbor. Paint all you want.
I want to thank everyone who's come out, everyone in chat. Thank you for chiming in with your own opinions, thoughts on the stuff. If you guys are cool to chill, who can we raid into?
Let me let you know who's on my list,
Okay.
which was probably the exact same as yours.
Most likely.
Yeah. So we got Teru running Final Fantasy 14. We got Zayu, who is doing a pre-show for Makers. Civic is on with Pokemon Sword and Shield. Bell is currently just chatting, but is doing Gunpla. Perseus Lad, Platinum, Pokemon Platinum.
Ooh,
And Bleep is on with Monster Hunter Stories 2.
Ooh, do we want to go? Let's do Bleep. We haven't raided into Bleep before.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's
Can
been a
you-
while
can you
since
set that
I've
up?
seen Bleep. Yeah, for sure. I got you, bro.
Awesome.
Raid.
Do you have your topic for the next Joe Mama's, Squaaakin Joe Mama's podcast?
Yes, Fast and Furious. No.
Seriously? Seriously, you
I'd be
could.
down.
You totally
I'd be
could.
kind of down.
Can we?
Maybe.
I'm
quite
marathoning
possibly.
them, so like I'd be ready.
I know them all by
I've never
heart.
seen a Fast and a Furious.
You know why? It's because you don't care about family.
Oh lord.
That's it. That's honestly it.
So Raven will pick his topic. If that's his topic, he'll let us know when we'll be doing the next podcast.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll figure it out along the way. Obviously, just make sure you're keeping track on the Discords. We'll let you know. Here's Joe's Discord. Show him some love if you haven't done so. Hop in there.
Squaaakinatjoemama. This is what we'll type in when we go in, guys. That's our raid call sign. Also, let me open up the window so I can actually see this happen. Got this here. Cool. All right, so send us off again. Everyone, have a great rest of your evening. We'll catch you on our next streams. All right? Do it. Let's do it.
Bye.
Bye.
See everyone.
Did we do it? Are we there?
Yeah.
We're there.